All right, let's get a drive time. Tuesday afternoon, 7 minutes past the hour, 2 o'clock. Happy New Year. Let's gather around the fire. Santa's on his way. Have you been a good boy or good girl all year long? Are you getting a lump of coal or are you getting gifts tomorrow? It is March 18th, and this is the biggest storm we've had all year. How are your back? How's your shoulders? You guys do some shoveling today, some wet, heavy snow. Continues to fall here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. If you didn't know any better, you look outside and you'd say it's December or January, but it is mid-March. You thought spring was here, didn't you? Admit it. It's not. We got cooked, man. We got smoked. Congrats to my friends who are the snow bros. Go up and shred the gnar or whatever you do. Grab a little fresh pow, little cheddar. I know all the nomenclature. I could talk like a snow bro all day. Nonetheless, Tuesday afternoon, drive time. How are you? Good to have you along for the ride. My name is Spence Checketts. You got it tuned into the Drive with Spence Checketts on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. We are back in studio after a fun day yesterday up at the historic John M. Huntsman Center for the announcement that Alex Jensen officially is the 17th head coach for the Utah men's basketball program. We'll talk about the press conference today, some takeaways from the comments that Alex had to make and had to say yesterday at the Huntsman Center, and the latest on the staff that will surround him, the coaches that will sit next to him on the bench. What's that going to look like? What are some of the names that are floating out there? When can we hear an official announcement? Utah basketball is still technically in action. They are going to play in the College Basketball Crown, a new college basketball tournament that was made to invite teams that weren't very good to keep playing. March 31st, 1 o'clock Mountain Time. It's Butler, the Butler Bulldogs. Some interesting, I'll say, brands, historic teams in this tournament. None of them very good this year. That's why you're in the College Basketball Crown instead of the NCAA tournament or the NIT. We do have a couple of local teams in the NCAA tournament. Brigham Young will take on VCU, 6-11 matchup there. And then Utah State, after stumbling a little bit down the stretch, made it in, and they're going to take on UCLA. UVU is in the NIT, and the Utes are in the College Basketball Crown. So, of course, it is mid-March, even though if you look outside, you wouldn't think that it is, which means we'll do some college basketball on the show today, and we'll get you ready for the NCAA tournament that gets rolling on Thursday. The play-in starts today. It is the play-in. Nope, not yet. It is the play-in. St. Francis, Alabama State, 2-16 seeds. That'll start at 4:40. This is the time of year where, for probably the first time, unless you like Impractical Jokers, which I do, but Impractical Jokers can be found streaming now, you need to get familiar with a television station called True TV. St. Francis, Alabama State, 2-16 seeds at 4:40 Mountain Time, and then it's North Carolina, San Diego State. Dayton, Ohio, a couple of play-ins, South Region. They do not call the NCAA tournament. It's in front of me. They call it the First Four, which is completely separate from the tournament, which starts on Thursday. Utah Hockey Club in action tonight with a big one. They're taking on Edmonton. And ultimately, every game here on out is a big one for the Utah Hockey Club. Edmonton is one of the teams that is sitting just right ahead of the Hockey Club for that wild card spot. Well, excuse me, Edmonton is actually firmly entrenched in the Pacific. They're second. Minnesota has ran away. They're at 81 points. No chance to catch them. But Vancouver, St. Louis on 73. Calgary has a game in hand, but they're also on 71, as is the Utah Hockey Club. But a big one tonight for the Hockey Club if they want to continue their march towards the Stanley Cup wildcard playoffs. On the road in Edmonton, 7 o'clock Mountain Time start on ESPN. Speaking of the Utah Hockey Club, reports are that the nickname has been decided upon. And we'll tell you what, the reports are and what I believe it to be. And we'll kind of give you that information. On the program today, the Utah Jazz lost their 10th straight basketball game last night. The Jazz are the worst team in the NBA as far as wins and losses go, which, call me old-fashioned, that's a metric I still believe in. The Jazz are 15-54. They've lost 10 straight basketball games. They lost to the Bulls last night. And now the Jazz hit the road for a little bit. There's only, 15, 16 games left? Just put us out of our misery. Let's get to lottery day. The Jazz are going to hit the road now for a little bit. Isaiah Collier, pretty good last night. That was really about it. Walker Kessler is shooting threes now. I don't know if you're interested in that. Excuse me, I misspoke. The Jazz are at home for a stretch before they hit the road. So last night started a stretch of 6 straight home games. Coming up tomorrow, it is Washington, which is a big one for all the wrong reasons if you care about your basketball team winning games. Friday, it's going to be Boston. Then Sunday, Donovan Mitchell, Cleveland Cavaliers. On Tuesday of next week, it's Memphis. And then Thursday of next week, it's Houston. And then the Jazz are on the road for 5 straight after that. Then they'll come home for a couple of games. They'll close the season out on Sunday, April the 13th at Minnesota. RSL will be back in action coming up this weekend. The lads actually got a win on the road in Houston. Both Diego and Diogo. Now, this is not an episode of Blues Clues. We're talking soccer. They both got goals, and RSL was able to get the win. So even though it is snowing outside, soccer season is here. Good guest list on this Tuesday afternoon. Great to have you guys with us. Stay safe out there. It is bad on the roads. Our first guest right out of the gates, Tony Jones from The Athletic, who covers the Jazz when the Jazz are worth covering, and when they're not, like right now, he covers the Nuggets and does a little stuff with the 76ers, some NBA draft stuff. Tony is a guy that's plugged in on the local hoop scene, so we'll do some Alex Jensen with Tony today, some Jazz and some big picture NBA. Former athletic director up on the Hill, Chris Hill, stops by live in studio for an entire hour to react to the news that Alex Jensen back in the fold. What does Dr. Hill think about the hire? We'll get to some Utah basketball and football with Dr. Hill. Zach Harper drops your NBA Daily Assist. Then we'll jump around with a little bit of everything with our guy, Tony Parks, the voice of the Bees, longtime local radio personality, on a Tuesday afternoon. Tony Jones, Dr. Chris Hill, Zach Harper, Tony Parks, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, excited today for the play-in to start. The play-in tournament to start.
Yes.
St. Francis, Alabama State, North Carolina, San Diego State. The winner, Porter, of these two games, they get to play in the NCAA tournament, which starts on Thursday.
They do, and the loser goes home. It's postseason basketball.
Oh, it totally is postseason basketball. Yeah, it is.
There's snow on the ground. You mentioned that's on True TV, which, if you're not familiar with True TV, number one, get familiar with our friend of the show, Joe Gatto.
That's right, Joe Gatto, friend of the show. I forgot we had Joe on. That's right, yeah.
Obviously, you haven't watched Lizard Lick Towing or...
Wait, sorry? Don't say or and move on from that. What did you say?
Or...
Wait, did you say Lizard Lick Towing?
Lizard Lick Towing. That was like a repo reality show that was on True TV for a minute.
All right.
Yeah, they're the king of reality TV, trash reality television. On some of the True TV stuff.
Trash reality television is so popular that you can make your way into the White House just with having that on your resume. So folks seem to love trash reality television.
There we go.
All right. Porter Larson producing the show today, back in studio after a fun day at the Huntsman Center. Tony Jones bats leadoff today. Don't send any emails or texts. Calm down. But before we get to Tony on a Tuesday, courtesy of our good friends at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Stretch run in pro basketball is here. March Madness in college basketball is here. And if you've ever wanted to get involved in putting a couple of ducats on sports in some way or the other, Prize Picks is the easiest and best way to do it. You don't have to learn about spread, over, under, study teams. It's easy. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 player stat projections to win up to 1,000 times your cash. So the Bulls were in town last night. We'll use that as an example. Lauri Markkanen, more or less than 19.5 points. Nick Vucevic, more or less than 8.5 rebounds. Stuff like that. It's really easy to do. So check it out, and they're giving you free money, giving away free money as a result of them being a client on the show. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 at checkout, and you get $50 when you play your first $5 bet. You don't even have to win the bet to get the $50. So download that Prize Picks app today. Use that promo code ESPN700 at checkout. You get $50 when you play your first $5 bet with our friends at Prize Picks. Run your game all season long. All right. So if you are a fan of the program, first of all, thank you. Hello, how are you? If you listen, you know that I've been discussing this Alex Jensen situation now for a number of weeks, far before it became official, when it felt like Mark Harlan was high speed ahead in this direction. I don't know how many candidates Mark interviewed. There are reports out there that he talked to a handful of different coaches. I cannot corroborate any of it. But the more and more this stuff kind of started to manifest and kind of unfold, it felt like Alex was the number one target, and Mark went all in on making sure this went down. So yesterday, it was really fun to be up at the Huntsman Center to do the show up there in the afternoon. We said goodnight just in time for the Alex Jensen press conference. A lot of former Utes in attendance. It was fun to see a lot of the legends, a lot of friends of the program. Jeff Judkins in the house, Donnie Daniels in the house, Jeff Johnson, Craig Rydalch. By the way, can we get Craig Rydalch on the freaking radio show, Mr. I Know Every Rydalch that exists in the state, please?
I grew up with those guys, but yeah, we can try that.
Can we just do that?
He's a quiet guy, but I'll reach out to him.
Well, I mean, he did a TV hit.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he did a TV hit with Adam Mikulich. And look,
I missed that.
I know Adam Mikulich. He's the sweetest guy around. But let's get Craig on the show. See what he has to say.
That one's easily done.
Okay, fair enough. So Craig was in the house, as was Josh Grant, friend of the program, who's made a lot of waves, quite frankly, on this show. But it was fun to see all those guys up there and fun to hear what they had to say about the hiring of Alex Jensen. Several of these people played with Alex and knew Alex. Obviously, Coach Judd coached Alex when he was an assistant for Rick. And Alex talked about his time with Rick Majerus, called him a friend and a mentor, which kind of warmed my heart a little bit. You don't hear a lot of people talk about Rick Majerus that way. Because at times Rick was, how shall we say, a little bit curt and direct with his communication style. But when Alex talked about how Rick ruined basketball for him, meaning you can't watch the game of basketball the same way after you've been coached by Rick Majerus because of the way he sees the game, because of the way he studied the game, because of the way he understood the game. I've often said during my 20 years in radio in this market that I am of the belief that Rick Majerus gave his life literally to the game of basketball. I think that's how obsessed he was with it. That's how much he loved it, almost to the expense, certainly of his personal health, but also a lot of relationships with other people. He just loved the game of basketball and was obsessed with it in a way that if you are Alex Jensen, who is the only person on earth who had the opportunity to both play for Rick and then coach alongside him, I believe, I don't think there's anybody else in that category. That's only a positive thing if you're a fan of Utah basketball. Now, also in attendance yesterday during the presser, several powerful boosters, several powerful donors, and a lot of reports that have surfaced over the past couple of weeks ever since this thing became official is that this hire, in large part, was donor-directed, was based on the feedback and the wants and the desires of people that are writing big checks for the athletic department. And, you know, you can be uncomfortable with that all you want, right? Because what this wasn't was your classic, typical coaching search as it pertains to kind of the way you go about this more often than not. And the way that Mark Harlan went about this last time when he landed on Craig Smith. You know, a lot of P4 schools, not all, but most P4 schools, we could talk Dusty May, Michigan, we could go over a myriad of different examples, typically hone in on coaches that have just been grinding away, smaller school, smaller conference, one bid league type stuff, and they've been able to bring small schools to the precipice of really special things. And then when they do that and a P4 job comes open, the natural kind of synergistic approach is to grab that coach from the smaller school, quadruple his salary, make sure that he's a rich man for the rest of his life, and then hire him to continue his career arc for this bigger program that you have to offer. This was not that. Alex is not that type of coach. Now, Alex certainly has been grinding for basically 20 years to learn the craft, but not in your typical way that would land you as the head coach for the University of Utah. Most people that spend as much time in the pros as Alex has spent never leave the professional ranks. For a myriad of different reasons, the lifestyle is a lot better. Now, that's a little bit different than it was even 4 or 5 years ago, or certainly 10, 12 years ago or whatever, when a big part of your job as a college coach was to take a connecting flight with 2 layovers, then rent a car and drive 4 hours to like the outskirts of Iowa to recruit a prospect and stay at a La Quinta Inn and smash some Jersey Mikes. Nothing wrong with any of that. But if the alternative is to fly in a 4-star hotel in the sky and eat shrimp and lobster and steak, and then land and check into your 4-star, 5-star hotel, and that's your life. Not a lot of people trade the professional life for the college life. Now, we've seen some exceptions because now the college gig is a little bit different than it was prior to. Okay. And so while you can bristle at the notion that this hire may have been driven by powerful, rich people that finance the athletic departments, you better get over it because that's the name of the game now. In a way, it's always been the name of the game, but it's just more front-facing and obvious at this juncture because if you look at any of the teams that have done anything special in college basketball this year, or any of the teams that are going to do anything special outside of the Cinderella from time to time in the upcoming NCAA tournament, they have a payroll that is sizable for the talent on the floor. It's no longer do we have $5 or $6 million to pay a top shelf coach. Now it's do we have $5, $6, $7 million to get the coach we want, and do we have several $millions available at our disposal to pay the players to come play here. And there are plenty of Utah boosters and donors. I almost did it again. That are very, very excited from everything I can tell that this was the decision that Mark Harlan landed upon to bring Alex Jensen back home. And, of course, you guys know the deal with Alex by now. In-state kid, Viewmont, Davis County, unbelievably skilled college player. Played in the pro ranks overseas for 6, 7, 8 years, and then decided he wanted to try his hand at coaching, and, of course, lands with Coach Majerus. A couple of years in college, transfers over to the pros. Quinn Snyder's #1 assistant for 9 years. 1 year with Will Hardy. A couple of years with Jason Kidd and the Dallas Mavericks. And Alex, throughout the course of his presser, referenced his professional ties. Didn't just talk about Rick, talked about Jason Kidd, of course, Quinn, and his experience in developing talent. Because say what you want about the changing landscape of college basketball. Say what you want about the things that you need now to stay competitive that maybe you didn't need 5 or 6 years ago. It doesn't change the fact that your coach has to be able to develop young talent at a very high level. So when you hear people knock on, Johnny Bryant's a developmental coach. All right, well, that's what you need in college. That's what you will always need in college because these are 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. And, yes, a lot of them stay for a long time. I think Trevin Nell's about to turn 47. A lot of them stay for a while, and a lot of them stay for 5, 6, 7 years. And so you get some kids in their early-ish, maybe sometimes mid-20s, but you still have to develop talent in addition to the economic viability and financial infrastructure of what you have at your disposal to pay talent to play for you. It's one thing to get these kids to sign on the dotted line, pay them what they're asking, motivate them to come to the University of Utah. But after that, what do you have to do? You have to develop them. And you have to set a culture and a standard in place that Alex, I think, will be very, very good at. And he talked about it. Toughness, grit, team play, defense first. Jeff Johnson talked about this. He also did a TV hit. When you have that type of culture in place, this really is a game that oftentimes comes down to make or miss. And there will be nights that you just miss, no matter what. That's part of basketball. But if you have the other things ingrained as part of who you are and what you do, you can stay competitive even the nights where the ball isn't going through the bucket. So if you missed any of the Alex Jensen press conference, I would encourage you to log on to ESPN700sports.com and check out the audio. Throughout the course of the show, if time allows, we'll play some snippets here or there. But coming up on the other side, batting leadoff on a snowy, chilly, cold March afternoon in Salt Lake City is Tony Jones from The Athletic, off and running. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Alex Jensen, introduced yesterday as the 17th head coach in Utah men's basketball history. Our next guest knows Alex. He covered Alex for a long, long time. He's a busy, busy boy. Tony Jones from The Athletic on a Tuesday afternoon. Tony, thanks for the time, pal. How we doing?
My guy, what's up? Thanks for having me as always.
No, I appreciate the time. You know, I appreciate your time every single week. So let's just, I know we've talked about it, and you were among the first to utter on this radio station, on this radio show, that the Utah job should go to Alex Jensen. That was about a month and a half ago. Well, we fast forward 6 weeks, Tone, and Alex is the hire. So because it's topical, even though we've talked about it, radio is not linear. What's your reaction now that the news is official?
I like it. I mean, listen, you know, it can go either way, bringing back an alum. But, you know, I've known Alex to be, you know, a very, very, very smart basketball mind and, you know, a very good people person. I think that he's, you know, he hasn't officially, this is his first head coaching job, right? But, you know, Quinn Snyder always used to tell us, you know, if I get kicked out of a basketball game, Alex is the one that's taking over. And that should tell you how much Quinn Snyder, you know, thinks about Alex, that he, you know, he made him his number two, went straight from here, went straight to the Mavericks, was on a staff that went to the NBA Finals last year. So, I mean, his experience, you know, just as a pure basketball coach in a vacuum is vast. And then when you add in the fact that, you know, he's a tie to Rick Majerus and all of the great Utah teams in the past, you know, half of this job, as we learned, you know, unfortunately with Craig Smith is in terms of in this NIL era, it's going to be, you know, what is the financial commitment to you from upstairs? What will your NIL be? From what my sources tell me, Utah is going to have, you know, a real number in terms of NIL for Alex to go out and try to get people and get real guys. You know, I think that he's going to bring a level of discipline to the program. I think he's going to bring a level of cachet to the program just by, you know, hey, I worked under Quinn Snyder. I worked with Jason Kidd. Hey, I helped turn Rudy Gobert into a Hall of Famer. You know, I took Derek Lively, you know, off of his 1 year at Duke where, you know, he struggled, frankly, and turned him into a rookie of the year candidate. You know, he's got a lot of wins under his belt that he can walk in the living rooms and he can say, hey, I've done this, I've done that. I think that he's going to be able to relate to players. I think he's going to be able to put a staff together that will be able to relate to players. And I think that he's going to have full administration support just because of, you know, who he was to the program, who he was to the community, and who he continues to be to the community.
Let me kick the tires, Tony, with you on a topic that I've asked most of my guests when discussing this, and I know you watch a lot of Utes, so I'm just going to read the list of names of players that do have eligibility left. Hunter Erickson actually has eligibility left as a grad transfer. He entered the transfer portal today, but because he has eligibility, I'll include him. Ezra Sarr, Kiana Dawes, and it was interesting, Tony, as you know, after Coach Eiler took over for Craig, he played Kiana a lot more minutes, and Kiana Dawes had 3 double-doubles in the final 5 games of the season. Moving over to Miro Little, had a really good game against BYU and Provo. And then Mike Schravjamps, in addition to Jake Wallin, who also is officially in the transfer portal. Just give me your feel for and nobody knows, but out of the list, out of the players I just listed off, any thoughts on who Alex might want to grab to come back next year?
Well, I mean, the guy that I would bring back, you know, just in my opinion, would be Asar, because he is, you know, we know what his weakness is, right? Like, he's not a great shooter, but he could kind of do everything else really well. Like, he's a really good defender. He's got long arms. He's a Big 12 athlete. He's a Big 12 level player physically. he can handle the basketball for 6'8" and being a power forward. He's a really good passer for his size. He's a guy that, if he had a jump shot, I don't know that he's ever going to get one, but if he had one, I think that he'd actually put himself in position to have a chance at playing at the next level. I do like Jake Wallin. I thought that, I wasn't surprised by him going into the transfer portal. I wouldn't be surprised by anybody on this current roster going into the transfer portal. And like you said with Dawes, you looked at I think it was against Kansas State. You look at the game he had against Kansas State, you see the glimpses of the athleticism, but you also see glimpses of the shot coming around and what he can be when he has confidence as a Big 12 level athlete. So those are probably the three that I would look towards bringing back. I know that Miro Little really struggled from the point guard spot. I saw him against Kansas, and I thought he was terrific. But I think that there's definitely inside the program internally question as to whether he's a Big 12 level, starting point guard. So, he'd probably be on the fence, but I would definitely, my first call would be to Asar, because I think that whatever roster or whatever kind of roster Alex puts together, I think Asar's skill set and his physicality and his athleticism can fit with that roster.
All right, moving over to this, the Big 12 was not the best basketball conference in America this year. That was the SEC. And then you get into a healthy debate. Their floor is 3. I think it's probably the second best conference in America this year. And any given year, it could be the best. It just depends on the landscape and recruiting and talent and coaching and all that. So I want you, Tony, to give us what you believe to be as a reasonable expectation for year one from Alex, because there's a lot of excitement about what he could do. There's a lot of excitement about hopefully the long game of bringing this program back to consistent winning and respectability. But even with the modern landscape of the transfer portal and being able to turn rosters over, a one-year rebuild, while it would be great if they're back competing at the highest of levels in the Big 12 next year, I think it's tough to ask right away. So reasonable expectations year one next year, Tony, sound like what?
Well, it's the volatility of NIL can swing so much from one side to the next. I mean, there are programs in this country that have frankly put together entire programs in a year, and there are programs that have frankly lost entire programs for the off season. I think that NIL is that volatile, so a lot is going to depend on what kind of roster that Alex is going to be able to put together. I think the reasonable expectation is or reasonable hope. I hope Alex reopens relations with past alums that have played with in the program. I think that relationship has suffered for years and years and years, not only under Craig Smith but also under Larry Kristoviak. And I think that's I think internally that should be a hope. And I think internally establishing the support is there financially, but doubling down on the support and getting the Huntsman filled. Like, it's been so long since the Huntsman has been filled on a regular and consistent basis. And and I think that fans want something to cheer about, and fans want to be engaged again. So I think figuring out a way to get the fan base engaged, that's another thing, and that's also a chicken or the egg thing, right? Like the fan base gets engaged when you win. So how much is Alex going to win? I mean, I don't think that we can expect him to go to the top of the Big 12. Now, with Houston there, Kansas is going to be back because they're going to get Darren Peterson, and that kid is fantastic. Um, obviously Arizona's going to be there. Obviously, obviously right now BYU is going to be there. So I mean, there's a lot of teams that Alex is going to have to go through. Iowa State's going to be there as always. So, on the floor, establishing a culture on and off the floor. That's going to be, really important. Establishing a way to play, and figuring out a way to defend, and and be physical at the Big 12 level is going to be important as well. Not all of this is going to happen in 1 year, and not all of this, frankly, is going to happen in 2 years. But if you establish the base and establish the culture, I think eventually the wins are going to come.
One more question here before we move on. The question now becomes, what does the staff look like? And, I know online where I don't live, there's this whole BYU fan making fun of Utah fan if Utah copies the BYU staff. Well, if it works, you're going to look at it. It doesn't matter what level and what sport. This has always been a copycat type thing. If something works, you're going to look at it. How can we capture some of that? And I just think what Kevin Young did, bringing in basically an entire NBA staff top to bottom, coaches, strength and conditioning, in addition to a nutritionist who I guess just followed Kevin Young from the Suns. Like, they're all NBA people. And every time Kevin Young has a microphone, he talks about his NBA experience. And, of course, it's calculated. And if you're A.J. DeBanza and if you're A.J.'s father and your one goal is to play in the pros, you're going to look at a staff that knows how to develop and knows how to get your son there. And Kevin Young can walk into a living room and say, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Kevin Durant. I coached all of them. Alex can walk into a living room and say, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, and I could keep going. So for me, I know there's this kind of narrative and momentum around town to just fill it with former Utes. And if they grab Andre, I mean, look, you know me, I'm a Gen Xer. I believe, you walk into a gym with Andre Miller, and you have credibility in my mind that's really hard to find. But outside of that, I don't know that you just want every single seat filled with a former Ute. And Alex has been in the pros for 2 decades. He has relationships that far kind of surpass our borders here. So before we move on, just give me your take on what you think the staff should look like as we kind of await word of it being filled out.
Well, I think it needs to look. It needs to have good basketball people, up and down the staff. Whether, wherever those. I will say this. I don't I don't mean to press any buttons with BYU fans, but they're not the first team to do this. I mean, Dana Altman did this. And there are a number of coaches who have, dipped into the pros to fill out their staff. So, I think that Alex is smart enough to know what he wants and who he wants. I do think that there's obviously a chance that he's going to have a staff with multiple former NBA people on him, simply because that's where he's worked and that's what he's done, and those are the people that he knows. I would love to see Andre Miller on the staff, because I think that he's going to have, frankly, a recruiting footprint, in the Los Angeles area, where he can walk into living rooms and say, look at what I did at the University of Utah. And, those kids, obviously are a generation removed, but like you said, these are the parents. And, and I think that he's going to, he's going to have the ability to do that and do that with good kids, in the Southern California area. Obviously, Arizona reigns supreme there. UCLA reigns supreme there. You're not going to get everybody, but you're going to be able to get kids. Remember, 10 years ago, Dakari Tucker, LA kid. 20 years ago, Tim Drisdom, LA kid. Brian Markson, L.A. kid, Richard Cheney, L.A. kids, all L.A. kids who still live here. So I mean, it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility that if Andre's on the staff, he's going to be able to go and have some recruiting success in the footprint that he grew up in. But I think that Alex is going to surround himself with good, hardworking, and smart basketball people. I think that he would. It'll be interesting to see if he has somebody on the staff that has a real local recruiting foothold, similar to maybe a Chris Burgess. But and it's gonna be interesting to see what the mix is, what the matches are. But I think that he's going to be able to put together an effective staff for sure.
We need to get somebody here to start recruiting the right coast, Tom. We need some FCAC kids in the house. None of this LA stuff. None of this soft left coast stuff.
Oh man, I would have came if somebody would have called me. I'm not an FCAC kid though.
Well, but you're from the right coast, as I like to call it, Tom. But let me move over here. BYU, they win 9 of 10. It's so bizarre that the committee does not weigh conference tournaments like at all. Like Michigan just won the Big Ten. They beat 2 teams that are 4 seeds. They beat a team that's a 3 seed. Yeah, they're on the 5 line. And, the non-conference schedule for BYU wasn't great. And they did get trucked twice by Houston. And that's like a different level team. They land as a 6 seed. And ultimately, the Denver destination, I think, should supplement any unhappy BYU fans with the ability to go down to the game, 7-8 hour drive or whatever. But they get a VCU team coached by former Utah State head coach Ryan Odom. They've got the A10 player of the year, former Utah State guard. They've got 4 seniors in their starting lineup, 3 5-year guys, 1 7-year guys. They've got 3 guys that are 6'10" or taller. Sometimes they all play together. And they're not Houston. I don't know that anybody is, but they play with that same defensive intensity. And what they do is kind of allow threes. And if BYU is hitting their threes, they can play with any team in America. But what do you make of this first-round matchup for BYU, and what do you think their ceiling is during this tournament run?
I think styles make fights, and I think that is a rough game for BYU. That's a rough matchup. When the parents came out, the one thought that I had, and I actually tweeted this thought was, I like a potential matchup for BYU in the second round with Wisconsin better than I like the VCU matchup. And here's the thing: I'm not saying that VCU is a better team than Wisconsin, because VCU is not a better team than Wisconsin. Wisconsin is very, very good. One of the better Wisconsin teams that I've ever seen. However, styles make fights, and VCU wants to muck up a game, wants to get into passing lanes, wants to bump cutters, wants to turn you over, and wants to out physical you. And that is the exact kind of team that BYU is proven to be vulnerable against this season. Now, VCU, like you said, they're not Houston, because Houston is like physical on steroids. But that is a rough matchup, and it's an experienced team. They're not going to be afraid of the Big 12 moniker. That's a rough matchup. And Wisconsin, for as good as they are, this is not your typical Bo Ryan Wisconsin team. They want to go up and down the floor, and they want to shoot threes with you. And that's exactly how BYU wants to play. So what I will say is this: if you're a BYU fan, you got off the 5 seed line, so everybody's not talking about you being a 5-12 upset. That means something psychologically. You're in Denver. That is going to be a very, very pro-BYU crowd. So unlike last year in the first round, where that was a very, very pro-Duquesne crowd, this is going to be a pro-BYU crowd. It's going to be like a home game for BYU. So that's really good. And if BYU gets to Wisconsin, that's going to be another very pro-BYU crowd, and that's going to be a heck of a ball game. So what the Cougars have to do is they're going to have to take care of the basketball. Like you said, they're going to have to generate open looks, open threes, and they're going to have to make those threes. They didn't make those threes against Houston. And that was a big issue. That was a game where they really needed to knock down shots, and they weren't able to knock down shots. And, Richie Saunders, Trevor Nell, Dallin Hall, all of those guys are going to have to knock down shots on Thursday, or this is going to be a really tight, nail-biting game that can go either way down the stretch.
Over to Utah State. They had to wait for a little while and some nerves after them not necessarily finishing the season off super strong. They get UCLA out of the Big Ten, which still doesn't make sense as I say it out loud. But what's your take on this first round matchup, Tom?
I've seen mixed opinions of it. I've seen people say they love the matchup for Utah State. I've seen people say, they essentially hate the matchup for Utah State for similar reasons that people hate the matchup for BYU. This is going to be Mick Cronin does not play a lot of possessions. This is going to be a game that if Utah State can get it into the 70s, they're going to have a really, really, really good chance of winning the game. If this game is in the high 50s, low to mid 60s, we're going to say goodbye. We're going to say goodbye to Utah State pretty early. This is another game where styles make the fight, and I think that it's going to be really big on Ian Martinez to have a big game, to do what he does. It's going to be really incumbent on Falslev to have a really big game, to do what he does. But similar to BYU and VCU, Utah State's going to have to take care of the ball, and they're going to have to take care of the ball under a lot of pressure. But if they can do that, and then if they can rebound the basketball, Isaac Johnson, I'm looking at you. If they can rebound the basketball, and if they can make shots, I really like Utah State in that matchup.
I'm just curious, what did Tracy Morgan just down a bunch of Coney Island dogs? Like, I thought the food at the Garden was improved. How's our guy getting food poisoning and throwing up on the sidelines when the Knicks are actually good again?
Was that what actually happened?
He's claiming it's food poisoning. I bet he got loose with a couple of vodka sodas, but that's what he's claiming.
That was a nasty little. Did you see it?
I did. It was horrible.
That was pretty nasty.
It was.
Listen, I love basketball arena food. I really do. So, we're gonna have to ask Tracy under oath what ended up happening there. What do you think happened? You think he got loose with a couple of vodkas?
Yeah, and probably an edible or something. He probably just was partying too hard. I don't know, man.
They had to wheel him out of there, and his nose was bleeding.
Yeah, the Coney Island dogs at the Garden are not. That's not the choice. I mean, if you're gonna go Garden food, you want like the wings or the chicken fingers. They've got decent burgers, but maybe just down a bad hot dog. But that was a rough scene for our guy. There's no doubt.
That would have been like 4 bad hot dogs because that was a lot of regurgitation there.
It was. What do you got coming up? I know you're not doing any Jazz stuff. Are you all in on Denver right now?
I am pretty much all in on Denver, but I'm thinking about something in terms of Utah and the Washington Wizards tomorrow night, since that is the biggest game of the year for both teams.
It is. It is a massive matchup for sure for all the wrong reasons. All right, my guy, appreciate the time, and reach out if you need. Be good, okay?
Thanks, my guy. Appreciate you for having me.
Tony Jones from The Athletic, brought to you today by our friends at IFA Country Stores. Any drive to the basket begins with the first step. On the court, that's the ultimate power move. IFA's Step 1, crabgrass preventer. And lawn food is the first choice to give your yard the healthy, thick green look you desire. The neighbors will be green with envy. Shop IFA online at ifa.coop or stop by one of their 18 Utah locations today. All right, 1 hour down. We've got 3 hours to go on this snowy, chilly Tuesday afternoon. Coming up for an entire hour, the former athletic director at the University of Utah, Chris Hill, stops by. Going to move over to Zach Harper and Tony Parks. We got a busy Tuesday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700, 92 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN Radio Network. Always excited when we have the opportunity to do what we're about to do for the next hour, even though it is snowy and it is cold. Dr. Chris Hill made a sojourn downtown here in our studios. Dr. Hill, did you have to shovel this morning? This was quite a snowstorm.
Yeah, I did. I don't know where the guy went that was supposed to help me. I kind of was like, it was heavy. So that was almost my exercise for the day.
For sure.
For sure. But, boy, not much.
Yeah. It wet, heavy snow. Luckily, my son is in town. And so I woke up. I said, pal, get out of bed. The shovel's right there. Do your thing. So he was able to help me out, which was good. But it is wild. I mean, if you've lived in Utah for longer than a couple of years, March can bring a lot of different weather patterns for sure.
That's fun.
Good to see you, my friend. Thanks so much for the time. And a perfect time to have you in. Alex Jensen officially announced as the 17th head coach in Utah men's basketball history. I have not had a chance to discuss this with you, so what do you have to say?
Well, I wanted him to have his press conference and not talk about it as
for sure.
All that stuff because but it's been fun for me because I'm excited about it. And as I mentioned off air, he called me, on a Saturday before, and we talked for a long time. Then talked about our families and everything. That group of, they weren't just good in the 90s. Rick didn't travel with the team, so guys like me got to know the guys, and it was really fun. So we had a nice conversation about a lot of things. I was happy that he wanted the job, But again, when you care about somebody, you don't want to tell them, take it or do this or do that.
Sure.
But he was, and he's smart. We talked about stuff he knows. I mean, the world has changed. He knows that, and he's watched it from both ends now. And, he knows he's got to find some guys that, or a general manager, that's paid well, that doesn't want to be a coach, that knows how to deal with agents and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that person, as opposed to the NBA, needs to report to that coach. In the NBA, I feel sorry for the coach here because, the GMs aren't helping him win games.
Right.
I don't know if that's a secret in town or not, but
they're 15 and they're like 15 and it's not a secret, Dr. Hill.
Oh, really?
No, it's not a secret.
Oh my gosh, I thought they were just having a bad luck streak,
15 and 54. I think the fan base gets it by now.
Yeah, they do. So there's an example. You want to make sure the GM goes to the head coach, and he'll put together a good staff.
Yeah.
And, I used to say in the AD UCLA said to me, John Wooden ain't walking through the door, and Rick Majerus ain't walking through the door. So let's get over it.
Yeah.
Rick kind of ruined it for everybody, because if you add up the wins he had in the NCAA tournament, you could have like 4 states together and they wouldn't match up with it. I mean, he just won games.
Yes, he did.
And so, and he was a savant at his time, but it doesn't mean you lower expectations, but you have to well, you do. I mean, you can't expect that to happen.
You hope for it, but to expect it is just unfair to Alex, quite frankly.
Yeah, I expect them to do well. I think they'll get kind of in the top 5 or 6 of the league, and kind of that may be their birthright, and they can do that.
Yeah.
But I'm just excited for him, his family. It's just different because he's kind of not a star in front of the media. I mean, he's a good guy and all that. And he's a family guy. One of the things he was concerned about is, boy, you come back to Utah, you're the head coach, and I want to watch my daughter play soccer. And 32,000 people are coming up talking to him.
Right.
And how do I get in Dallas? I got to sit there and nobody knew.
Yep.
But if you want to move up the food chain, that's the way it goes. But I told him you got to learn how to have polite leaving behavior, so that you can say hello to people. Because I said, Alex, you could be there all day talking to people because you're so nice.
He's that nice of a guy, yeah.
Yeah, so you got to figure out how to be nice, but at the same time, they get the message that, Alex wants to watch his daughter play.
Right.
Got to have. So that's an interesting thing for him. But and his mom's still here, and he said she goes to jazz games and stuff. So it's gonna be great to see her there.
For sure.
So it's fun. I think he's really smart. He's really tough. He's today's coach, I think. He understands that you just can't treat kids like you did 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Little Johnny, if he doesn't like his team, his dad just puts him on another one at
Right.
AAU. So,
Right.
It's like, you want me to play defense? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But I think Alex will put it together. And he's learned a lot from Rick. And I'm not just talking X's and O's. I learned a lot from Rick, about running what I did. Amazing it's so, there was things that applied.
For sure. I mean, Rick was a very intelligent, conflicted, brilliant, maniacal person, for better or for worse. And it was interesting listening to Alex talk about, and Josh Grant has said this as well, that Rick ruined the game of basketball for him because, and when you hear that sentence, you're like, well, that can't be a good thing. And then Alex unpacked it and said every time he watches a basketball game, he watches it through the prism of how Rick used to watch.
Well, it's just like, I learned so much from him, but what you're just saying is we had an expression that I would tell people that Rick was an interesting collection of people.
Yes.
And even he didn't like, and he told me, even I don't like myself sometimes. But I learned so much from Rick, and it, I'm sure it was Josh, but role definition. Rick's teams, in anything you do, his teams had the role definition great.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes he would brutally assign the role and let them play, and people didn't play outside their role. They got along. This is genius. They get along. You think of a company, everybody knows what their job is. Everybody's doing that. And I remember one practice one time, Josh, and I'm pretty sure it was Josh. I'll have to ask him this. So Josh gives up a wide open shot to make a pass to somebody else. Rick freaks out. You think you're here to play defense? You're here to shoot the ball. You are selfish. And I went, what is he talking? Drew so-and-so, McKay McGrath, set that screen for you. He gave it up body for you. And you're selfish? That's what you got to do. And I'm thinking, that said so much because he's praising the guy that set the screen.
Sure.
He's also saying, I'm not going to be in love with this high score all the time, but he's also staying a high score. This is what you're here for.
Yeah.
Don't look anywhere else. And I thought, that's what part of what I took from it. And then all the little things. I mean, your hands have to be. I mean, he was crazy, but that's like any person I would consider expert at something.
I didn't have. I went to Rick's camp for 4 or 5 years growing up. Through middle school and high school, and then had a brief experience with him my freshman year at the U before I decided that. When you try to guard Andre Miller and you're a 5'11" white kid, you join a fraternity and figure out other things to do. But my brief interactions with him and then just listening to him talk about the game was how detailed he was about everything.
Yeah, and that's what I really, moving more with Alex is, that's what I like about his people will get that. It's hard to do with the details. I couldn't do it. Like you got to defend this way. Your feet need to be here. That's how you have to do it. And now it's going to be an interesting challenge for him because kids aren't detailed now. They just want to play and want to shoot the ball. And some of that you do have to give up. You can't coach like Rick did because kids' attention spans aren't that long.
Right.
And what they want to do is different what you want them to do, and offenses or defense. Bottom line, though, is you got to defend, rebound, and move on is what we used to say in the tournament.
Right. I wonder, and Dr. Hill is with us, Dr. Chris Hill, former AD at the U, hired Rick Majerus and was around for a long time, making a number of great hires, not just Rick. And we'll get to some football coming up in our second segment. But you hear a lot about the relationship between Rick and Alex, right?
Yeah.
And, Britton Johnson, who's a dear friend of mine, and Britton and I did jazz radio together for 7 years. Got to know his family. I mean, Britt's the sweetest guy in the world.
Oh, yeah.
I love Britt. Now, he and Josh Grant on the show kind of went back and forth a little bit the past couple of weeks, but it's all in good nature. They're both Ute legends, right?
Yeah.
But Britton always would tell these stories because one of my favorite things, like if we're at a Jazz game and the Jazz lose by 30 or whatever, I'm like, hey, let's just have fun during post. Let's tell Majerus stories. Let's talk about Rick, right? And almost every time we would enter the Majerus landscape of conversation, he would talk about how Rick would go at everybody, sometimes in a very uncomfortable, level that really made people feel super uncomfortable, as we all know, except for Alex. Like Alex was, and Andre, and Andre too, because Andre was awesome. But every alum that I've interviewed about that team always said Rick just had this thing for Alex. And Rick is on the record saying he's the smartest player that he ever coached. Then obviously when Al got into coaching, he coached with Rick. But shed some light on that relationship as you understand it.
Well, I think part of it is, Alex was competitive as heck. He followed the details.
Yeah.
He's a detail guy. And, he wasn't any kind of emotion that sent a stinky eye to the coach or anything like that. So, it's kind of like I always tell somebody, yeah, well, he favored Alex. Yeah, because Alex did what he had to do.
Right.
Phil Jackson probably favored Michael Jordan. I don't know. Maybe he did.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it just was somehow, and I think it just legend grew on top of it. All of a sudden it's this and it's that. But, the reality is Alex did what he was told all the time. And there are other guys on the team that they would, like Drew Hansen's one of my favorite guys
Yep.
that Alex played with, and they got along so well, and they were very similar. Now, if Drew were as good a player as Alex, Drew might have been his favorite.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's kind of like,
and Drew was a good player, solid player. Yeah.
He did big bat rolls.
Yeah.
When he was in the game, no fast breaks.
For sure.
Job.
Yep.
And that's what Alex get. And when you talk to him, he says, that's why you have to put together your staff with what roles people are going to play. You got to have now pro guys, which is the way the world is, and I think it's smart. But you need some college guys that know how to get into the NIL and also understand part of the college game. So I think Alex, because, it's not St. Alex. That's what we used to call him sometimes. Okay. But
that's awesome.
Yeah. But, he's going to take what he has from Rick, and he's a new age kind of coach. And it's not Rick anymore. It's Alex.
Right.
And that's hard for everybody because, Rick not only was a good coach, he was a national figure. And Alex, God bless him, he's probably not going to be a national figure.
I don't see Alex getting into broadcasting. I'll just say that. Like Rick took a little bit of time to do some draft stuff in broadcasting.
Yeah, but he was out.
Right.
He was too detailed for ESPN.
Right.
But anyway, I'm excited about him. I'm excited about he's going on. It's going to be fun to see the team grow. And I think they got a chance. The Big 12, although, they have been great, they're still good. But, there's some teams that Utah's birthright can be more than, and they can get there if they have the right support.
Well, Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I got you.
I was going to say, you referenced maybe top 5 or 6 in the league. Guess what that is? That's an NCAA tournament team. You're top 5 or 6 in the Big 12. You are dancing, and maybe even top 7 or 8. But you reference filling out the staff, and you've alluded to some of the dynamics already so far in the conversation, but let's dig in a little deeper. I kind of push back at the notion that every seat next to Alex has to be filled by former Utes. It feels like there's some momentum that way. And let me just say this. If Andre wants to come, you hire Andre Miller.
Yeah.
Because,
fair question.
Right, for sure. I mean, I'm a Gen Xer, and I was in school during those runs. And for me, if you walk into a gym with Andre on your bench, that's instant credibility that you can't get in very many places. Yeah. But Alex has been in the pros for almost 20 years. And Kevin Young down at BYU, his entire staff, not just coaches, strength and conditioning, administrators, nutrition, they're all ex-NBA people. Yeah. I think that's kind of the way to go. Tell me what you think.
I think it's the way to go. I think you still need some person or two on the staff that kind of has been in that recruiting cycle, AAU people, that kind of stuff. And you just don't need to go next door and get somebody. You need to really be thoughtful about how you want to put together. You have to have a match with them. There's a lot of things you have to have. And, of course, it's going to lean towards the pro model more, and that's what kids want to do and everything. But you need the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th guy on the team to be good. That's what you need, too. So you need somebody that understands that, and so – yeah, you need the pro model with the strength coaches and the nutritionists. And they have those folks in college, but they don't pay the kind of money, in the NBA. So you got somebody that's really good as a college nutritionist, but then the other person's off the chart, and you know how those bodies are now. Guys are playing and stuff. So, I think it's got to be that, and I'm repeating myself a little bit, but I think there's got to be a little bit, as I look at these teams and you put teams together, you got to keep some guys that are the Drew Hansons that are going to set the screen, do this, and maybe more mature. They're there for 3 or 4 years. Plus, that would help the fans more. We all fell in love with the guys that played for 4 years.
Yep.
And that was the deal. But now, and I always wonder how many of the one and dones are at the promised land at the Final Four.
Yeah.
How many of those guys? I mean, Cooper will. But how many guys have brought him to the promised land?
Outside of the unicorns, you're right. Cooper, Mello, Syracuse. I mean, if you go back and look at it, most of these teams are veteran teams. that have had players there that understand the system. Your point is well taken.
Yeah, but they need those. You can't win in the NCAA tournament without guys that are either going to be pros the next year or not. I mean, you can't pick the ideal thing. But some guys would stay. Some guy that's late second rounder may stay in because of the NIL stuff.
Yeah.
So that's why you got to know all that general manager stuff, all those agent stuff, and you got to put it together. It's a business.
It is.
Yeah, so you got to do it.
So tell me this: we're a good basketball state. We have a lot of talent at the high school level, and I'm not over. I don't do a ton of high school football or I'm busy. Like I don't have time to dig in all of it.
Right.
But people that cover these things in a day to day in a way that I don't say that the junior and senior class in state's pretty good. And Josh Grant joined the show a few weeks ago and talked about needing somebody on the staff that understands the state and needing somebody on the staff that understands how to recruit Utah. Now, I apologize once again to go back into, well, Rick did this, Rick did that, but Rick was able to go get Van Horn. He was able to get Andre. He was able to get Hano. He was able to get Bogut. It was a Rick recruit that Ray coached. And to your point, more often than not, when you look at teams that not just make the NCAA tournament, but go on runs to the Final Four, at least 2 or 3 NBA guys and at least 1 or 2 European guys. It's usually 3 or 4 pros. So talk about that balance where do you believe that Alex, who is a local kid from Beaumont, understands the state? Does he need to add more local flavor to the bench to recruit Utah? Or is this more of a priority to follow the pattern where you find an Andre in Compton or you go overseas and get a Medela, right? I mean, tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, okay, I'm being introduced as the AD, as a coach in any state in the country. I'm going to go for the local kids first. I'm going to go for the local. Well, you have to, and if you hit the lottery on somebody that's great, like Josh or Britton, they're your 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
Then you also have to look at the other guys that are good players. But at the end of the day, this place isn't that weird where you can't learn
for sure
about the community.
We're both transplants.
Learn how to go in and talk to the coach. Out to high school or Tim Few. I don't want to make it sound like Josh and I could have this discussion because I kind of agree with him, but that's not the end of the day. For me, you got somebody that's really sharp that wants to be in this community, learns, doesn't have their ego in the way. They can learn pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I used to say that with football. Well, he's from, Lower East L.A., and I thought, well, he's going to go into a school. He doesn't know the people there. It's another place.
Right.
So you don't. I don't want to be wishy-washy about it, but I'd love to have Josh right here and have the debate with him because you need the best players in the state. Period.
Yeah.
Anybody can help get them.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I think, and I think Coach Witt has talked about oftentimes wanting diversity on his staff, not just simply Utah. And there's a lot of Utah people on Coach Witt's staff, but he also has coaches that have coached in other states at bigger programs. So maybe there's a little bit of a parallel there.
Yeah, right.
What do you've already alluded to what you think could happen next year. And this is impossible to know. Expectations are the result of misery for sports fans all the time, right? Utah football this year, Vegas favorite, Big 12 champ, rough season, everybody's miserable. So you've done this, you did it for a long time on the administrative side. When you hire a new coach, what do you expect from him right out of the gates? What's a reasonable expectation next year?
Well, it depends on where your program is, but you want to coach. First of all, the expectations next year in this day and age. Let's talk in September.
Sure.
Who's on my team?
100%.
Okay. But there's when you go look at Alex's team, do they have a game plan? Can you tell? Are they? Is the worst shooter on the other team the one that's open? So it's February and the team's not doing great, but is everybody working hard? Is everybody getting after? Is everybody unselfish? So there's parameters that you can say after the first year. Did the team play together? Did they play hard? Do they know their roles? All those things you'll know, even if the players aren't as good, and you'll know that they know what they're doing. How they, when they're on the court, are they, moaning about the referee, or are they just getting after it? All those things need to be set up, and they do what they're told. They don't shrug their shoulders, and that sounds like old school, but it's not old school. People want to be coached, and they want to get better.
Yeah.
And so my thing, if I were to look at it, depending on who's on his team, I think long term, I think I know where it can be. But it just depends. If you just want to analyze, are they playing right? Are they playing all the things I just said? Are they being taught? Are
Yeah.
they better now?
Yeah.
Here's the one. Are they better in March than they were in November?
Trending up.
Right. Then you can coach them up.
Let me ask you one more thing here, and then we'll move on and take a break because I do have some football questions for you. Spring ball on the hill about to get going for the Utes. Alex is a introspective guy. I don't know that he's an introvert per se, but you're not gonna hear Alex do what Jim Boylan did at halftime of football games and try to, pump up the crowd. And Jim had a lot of energy, in a way that Alex just doesn't. And Craig was a little front facing with his energetic approach in a way that Alex isn't. I don't think it's a good or a bad thing. It's just who he is. Is he going to have to be a little bit more willing to put himself out there in more of a front-facing manner in order to recruit, or just be who you are, period, end of story?
He can't fake it.
Right.
Because kids know.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's more critical than not critical, more observant, can read through you than an 18-year-old. He'll get outgoing enough, but he's the kind of guy that when there's 5 people in a room, he's outgoing.
Dry sense of humor, funny dude.
Bit.
Yeah.
The whole bit. So when you're recruiting, you got to do that. But, he is who he is, and he's going to do that. And if I'm a parent and I sound too high on him, but, he's going to bring it together, and the kid, and he's got that cachet.
He does.
Yeah.
And if you want the front-facing personality, you go to his better half. Natalie will provide that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She's an actress.
Yes, she is, and she's a delight. She's lovely. I really love them both. So Dr. Hill live in studio. We're going to catch a quick break. Spring ball up on the hill starts this week. The spring game, the Forever 22 game, is still on the schedule. How long will that last? We'll talk about that coming up next. This segment brought to you by friends at Burt Brothers. With over 30 years of experience in nearly 30 locations, Burt Brothers ASE certified technicians bring expertise and professionalism to every interaction. Industry-leading warranties and low-price tire guarantees. It's a one-stop shop for your reliable repairs and maintenance. From tires and alignments to fluids and brakes, offering a full range of automotive services tailored to meet your needs. Now offering value tire options such as Americas and Summit tires, starting at just $69 with warranties that go up to 70,000 miles. As one of the few AAA certified shops in Utah, Burt Brothers upholds the highest standards in automotive service. Stop by Burt Brothers or Tire Busters locations, or schedule an appointment today to experience the trusted service that has made them a Utah favorite for over 3 decades. Burt Brothers, doing it better since day one. More information online at burtbrothers.com. All right, more coming up with Dr. Chris Hill live in studio on a Tuesday right here on ESPN 700. Dr. Chris Hill live in studio for another big segment on this snowy, cold Tuesday afternoon. You guys thought you were out of it, didn't you? You thought spring was here, didn't you? Well, March in Utah, if you're new around these parts, oftentimes will bring exactly what it brought over the past 24 hours. Then it's going to be 70 next week. That's just how we roll. All right, last segment, a lot of conversation about Alex Jensen, officially announced as the 17th head coach in Utah men's basketball history. Spring football,
Yeah.
Dr. Hill.
Speaking of the spring, yeah, go ahead.
Right. I look outside. Spring is here. From an athletic director standpoint, spring football, spin the beanie at all, get you excited at all? Like ultimately, what are the boxes you want checked during spring ball?
I'm not a big fan of the spring game.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the spring is to find out who your players are and this and that, and you kind of feel like you need. Well, you need to. You feel like you need to give the fans something, to keep them interested. But it's different now. Football's interesting all year long, and I don't know. I don't blame any coaches if they don't play anybody there. It's it's not like you leave the game saying, "Oh, I'm going to buy season tickets now that I've been."
Right.
So it's kind of like I don't know. It's just not something that excites me. Never did.
Yeah.
So for me, I hear around the country, and I'm starting to think, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, selfishly, because we all just want to do what's best for our own day-to-day existence. Spring ball has always just been kind of a fun content thing.
Yeah, right.
For us self-serving media, right? Because that's what we are, right? That's what we are. Ultimately, we want something fun to talk about on air. And I think for fans, it's kind of fun because there are so many people, and probably more people in our market more than ever, that just love college football so much that they just want that little fix to remind them, hey, just wait, it's on its way.
Yeah, I mean, when I put on my hat of being, more business and thinking about it and all that stuff, you realize, fans like it. You got to respond to the fans. You can't just not do that. And I think for fans, I've seen people tailgate now, and they do all those things, and that makes a big-time football program.
Yeah.
It kind of makes you flex your muscles and say, hey, yeah, we got a lot of people at our spring game and da-da-da-da. But I also feel, like it's tough. It's tough. But fans like it, so why not, I guess?
Yeah, and, I'm looking at this real quick because a topic just kind of turned on in my brain that I wanted to talk to you about that I forgot, because we're obviously in the midst of March Madness and college basketball, and Alex announced yesterday. And Utah has clearly moved into a space where for a long time it has been labeled as a football school.
Right.
But you don't have to be one or the other,
No.
Dr. Hill, right? So number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament is Auburn. Okay, Tennessee is a 2 seed. Florida is a 1 seed. They might go win the entire thing. I could keep going. Bama has a great program this year. Georgia has a top 10 seed. I mean, there are a grip of schools that have been able to capture both, which, of course, should be the goal. What are the challenges from an administration standpoint? You don't want to label yourself one or the other. You can be both.
No. And we had it for a while off and on.
Yeah.
We had pretty good years
Yep.
where both did well.
For sure.
I mean, the classic is Bogut and Alex Smith.
Number one picks, yep.
Yeah, but, you need to have them both. You can do them both. But there are some that can't. I mean, I think they just get there. And that's one of the things about the job here is when somebody takes the basketball job, they go, well, they've done it before, so maybe we can do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to be one or the other. What's funny about an AD, if you have a basketball background, the football coach can always say, yeah, but he's a basketball guy.
Right.
And that's like
Yeah,
their card that they can stick it to you. And the same the other way around.
Right.
Basketball guy, he's a football guy. He doesn't understand. You want to say, wait a minute. I understand that a full stadium makes me a lot smarter.
Right. Exactly.
From a self-serving standpoint, I'm going to want that program to do well.
Yeah. But you can be both. You don't have to be one or the other.
There's no reason why you can't. We've been there before. We'll be there again.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it is. I'm bullish on, the university's potential where we live, only going to get better, so I don't see why we can't. We have, we for a while with football was like nobody invested, nobody did that. But now our high school football is really good.
It is.
It wasn't that way, 1990, 95.
Right,
It
right,
wasn't, but
right.
now
Yeah.
it's really good.
Yeah.
And basketball's always got some play, and you only need a few from the state,
Right.
and then you build like we just talked a half hour ago. So I think Utah can be good in both. There's
So
no question.
There's a couple things here on the basketball side before we get back to a spring football question that I have, because news came down about 2 weeks ago that it looks like the John M. Huntsman Center is going to get a little facelift.
Yeah.
And your thoughts on that? I mean, I feel like it's kind of needed and has been for a little while.
Yeah, it's needed.
Yeah.
It's needed.
Mhm.
And, I don't know, I've read about the plan and talked to some people, and maybe, they're going to build things there that could actually provide a profit to maybe help pay for some things.
Mhm.
It really became, and I think the legislature would like that if they put things in there
Sure.
that would, help pay for it and ever. And then they got to cross that line between are you a charity or not. But, hard for me, hard for people that, I've walked through that door
Mhm.
into my office a lot more than
Mhm.
even before that.
Yeah.
But it's really nice when you sit inside. But the rest is, we always thought we needed to do something.
Mhm.
We felt we needed to just take all the athletic offices, build an athletic office complex. Wouldn't have to be big
Mhm.
for all the other coaches, all the administrators, and just gut the thing.
Yeah.
And get the concourses, whatever. But it's too big. It's
Yeah.
too big. I don't care what people say. It's too big right
Yeah. And there is
BYU's a different story.
For
That's
sure.
The different story.
For sure. And I never worked there the way you did, but yesterday I did my show there prior to the presser, and even when I walk in that building, I'm like, man, this place is really cool
Oh,
because there's
it's-
so much history there. You know.
Oh, it's so much history. It's a beautiful place. Location's great, and there's a lot of history there, and I have a lot of good memories.
Sure.
Of games that were there, and Josh was one of them. One of the plays I remember the most. But there's a lot of fun memories. It's got a lot of great history. I'm repeating myself, but life goes on.
Yeah.
You want to do what's best for the program, and
Right.
you want to do what's best for the fans, and it needs either a big time remodel or whatever, or
Mhm.
it needs to be built all over again.
Yep.
Which is seems like it'd be a little ways down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously a lot of steps still need to be taken before there's a shovel in the dirt, but we'll see how it kind of unfolds. Let me ask you this, and I've asked a lot of my guests this over the past couple of weeks. I'm not a huge you've got to win the day guy, you got to win the press conference guy when you hire a coach. If you have not seen Nick Sirianni's introductory press conference when he was hired as the coach of the Eagles, go watch it. And when I saw it, I'm like, can this dude even formulate a sentence? And they just won the Super Bowl, right? But I felt like with Alex, it was a win the press conference dynamic and a needed one at that after the news came down that they were moving on from Craig, and a team that was actually better than people expected them to be this year, which is kind of lost in the narrative. But I wonder because for me, wherever you're at in the ecosystem, if you're a former athletic director like Dr. Chris Hill, if you're a former player like Josh Grant or Britton Johnson, if you're in the current administration, or if you cover the team like I do, I feel like this hire of Alex has just been consistently applauded by everybody.
Yes.
Is that kind of the feel you get?
Yeah, I think it's sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the way he's
Some buzz and
got
excitement.
the
Yeah.
attracting,
Yeah.
the buzz, and he and it wasn't a press conference that would do it. It's just who he is and
Sure.
what he do. And
Sure. Yes.
who knows? But so yeah, it helps the buzz. That's for sure. Now you got to play.
Right. Right.
That's the greatest marketer going. Whose kid knew?
You got to play, but we need people in those seats. I mean, I think one of the things that Coach Witt has in his back pocket is on a Saturday night. Well, I was about to say when USC is in town. Now I'm going to cry. But on a Saturday night when
Me too.
Kansas State is in town or whatever, not the same. But on a Saturday night, let's say BYU's in town. It's a rivalry game in Salt Lake. You're a high school player. You're a running back at East High. And Coach Witt says, come here, stand on the sideline, look at that crowd, look at the muscle, look at this. Don't you want to play here? It's hard to say no because Rice Eccles these days, for the past number of years, has been a tremendous environment. And it's been a while since the Huntsman felt the way it did when it was ticking. So how do we get people in the stands in order to help Alex recruit players? Players want to play in front of fans, Dr. Hill. They just do.
First of all, Lavelle Edwards, one of his things he said is one of the best things I did is I made Saturdays important in Provo. And, when he told me that, I laughed. I said, you're a pretty smart guy. I don't want to be too cynical, but I will be because, that's the deal. Rose Bowls didn't hurt.
For sure.
Urban didn't hurt.
For sure.
Rick didn't hurt.
Right.
And, you got to win.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, the marketing, we started spending hardly any money on football when I left marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have to do a thing.
Yeah.
And you can't, not everybody can win, but, it's like, went to a meeting one time on a Sunday with some presidents of universities who are running. He says, it's Saturday in football. Everybody comes in. He goes, the problem is half of you lost and half of you won, and 75% of you were supposed to win.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they can do things. They can get it excited. But, did you see Oklahoma State stands this year?
Yeah.
There was nobody there.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
5 years ago?
Yep.
Packed.
Right.
And I don't want it to, you asked me a question. Here's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think if you win,
yeah,
you're fine.
Yeah.
And if you don't win, they're not fair weather fans. That's everybody.
For
you
sure.
don't want to go to the game and not be able to say, that's my team and look how well we did and yay me.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. I hear you.
Yeah.
All right, let's shift back to a couple of more football things before I set you loose. So I referenced the Forever 22 game, the Utah Spring game. It's coming up. You can get tickets online. Check it out for sure. But at last check, and I'm not going to get all of them right, but USC, Nebraska, Florida State, like some of the biggest big dogs in college football are just like, we're not doing the spring game anymore. Mm-hmm. As you referenced earlier, the last, 6, 7, or 8 years or whatever, most of the ones and the twos don't get a lot of run. Some of them do, but mostly these are walk-ons, young players, just to kind of show the fans, hey, we're here, this is fun, but we can't have our starting quarterback hurt, as we've learned in Salt Lake, so let's put him on ice. Before I get to Deion's idea, which I think is actually pretty good, do you think this trend of spring ball, not spring ball going away, but do you think the trend of the spring game going away is something that could permeate throughout the entire country?
There's a good possibility. I mean, think about what we talked a while ago. There is the fan factor, saying, hey, I have a responsibility as the athletic director and the people that love football to give them something to, have a group hug in the spring. And, that's important. From a very practical standpoint, there's really no upside from the actual coaching of the game. They'd rather have a regular practice if you're just worried about the coach of the game. And so, but I don't know how many are going to keep doing that. They got to do something in spring, but what it would become, the spring games, it's going to an event that's exciting is what the fans want.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to the game any more than, fans that really know, what's that new guy like and what's this like?
Right.
They really just want to get together and watch football.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And that's it. I should reference the Forever 22 game will be on April the 19th at 1:00 p.m. And tickets can be found at utahtickets.com. $10 for a bleacher seat, $22 for a chair back, and $50 for a premium seat. Utah will have 15 spring practices, and that gets rolling this week. So let's move over here for a minute because, look, it's not a reality now, but I do think at some point over the next, 3 to 5 years, the FCS, FBS games will go away. The smaller schools who come up here for the paycheck and the kids get their heads kicked in before they go back down to Southern Utah or whatever. Those things are going to go away once college football settles into the landscape of whatever it's going to be, right? We talk a lot about the NFL model with AFC, NFC. Is it SEC, Big Ten? They're already holding meetings without everybody else, right? And so we're moving in that direction. Deion's idea for Colorado's spring game is to kind of do what they do in the NFL when you have like the two-a-day practices with the Patriots and the Jets or whatever, and then they scrimmage at the end of the two-a-day practices after like 3 or 4 games. And his idea is to supplement the financial needs of some of these smaller schools to have them come to Boulder, practice against Colorado, and then have a game where fans can attend where you scrimmage those teams. I actually think there's something here. I think it's kind of a decent idea from Deion. What do you think?
Yeah, this is first I've heard of it. I
Just
didn't read about that
a couple days ago, yeah.
Yeah, let me flip a coin and tell you what I feel. No, I think that there's, like I said, I'm repeating, there's some attitude towards that. I'm really glad that they would pay those schools because they need that money
For sure.
and it's only fair.
Mm-hmm.
And well, who cares about fairness now? I guess. But I kind of like the thought of that because it's different, and you don't have to play your top line players either. But it kind of gives you a little shot at it, and because what you're saying is the
FCS, yeah,
are not going to be playing big time schools for paychecks. You think in the fall anymore?
I don't think so. I think once this new Super League actually comes into reality, they're just going to play each other. It's going to be like the NFL.
Yeah, it's going to be like the NFL. And college are a little different because good old State U, you're used to being 10-2.
Right.
And 6-6. So.
6-6 could get you into the playoffs and go to a Super Bowl in the NFL with 6 losses, though. I mean,
right.
I just think, Dr. Hill, this is just my opinion, college football is starting to be run like a hedge fund. It's starting to be run by private equity businesses where the bottom line is the bottom line, and powerful TV executives are saying to them, no more Alabama Mercer, okay? I want brand names every single weekend, and therefore the Utah against Southern Utah dynamic, I think, is going to go away.
Well, I used to say to staff when something came up like that, say something that would be so obvious, nothing personal. I would say, I have a great grasp of the obvious. Spence, you have a great grasp of the obvious. It's a pro deal.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. If it doesn't go that way, I'll be shocked.
Right.
And that's the way, that's the way it's going to go, and you just have to accept it and plan from there is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So what's the deal? What are we going to do with this type of thing? And I think that's, just thinking about it, I think that's probably a pretty good idea to do that.
Yeah, I mean, live TV rights that's what is bankrolling sports now.
Yeah.
The TV contracts. Like, I think the NBA has a massive issue with their star players not wanting to play basketball, which is their job description, but they're about to enter a new $72 billion TV deal. So they'll say to me, what's the problem? What problem do I have exactly? Oh, you're mad that Luka didn't play tonight? Guess what? We just signed a $72 billion TV deal. Mm-hmm. And I feel like college sports is moving into that reality. Oh, you're mad that Southern Utah isn't coming up for their paycheck? Okay, well, look at this TV deal we just signed because we don't have to televise that game anymore.
Right.
Which sucks. I'm with you. Like, I guess what's fair anymore is out the window. But part of me has always loved working in sports because there is an altruism to it where you don't want to just be in an ecosystem that's motivated only by the almighty dollar. There are plenty of jobs that only do that, Dr. Hill. It's why I wanted to do this, not to be in that kind of existence day to day.
Yeah, I agree that it's going to be like the pro model. It's going to be more and more exciting. College, good back to Alex. Alex told me, he said, I understand the deal now, that football's the big deal.
Sure.
And just like, so college can grow and grow and grow within just an infrastructure of 30 or 40 schools.
Mm-hmm.
TV contracts will be bigger.
Yep.
And they'll be shared with fewer people. And maybe everybody else will run maybe what they heart says they used to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I fully agree that it's going to be, the big time's going to be narrowed down. Big time.
Last thing, then I'll set you loose so you can get back out. Oh, my gosh, it's snowing again. So
not sticking.
So drive safe out there. I have not spoken with you, and I didn't cover the whole, is Kyle coming back or is he not intensely because Kyle's under contract, and he's just a coach that is still currently employed, and I just figured he'd come back.
Right.
But it was enough of a story that they did release a statement essentially saying Coach Witt is back for another year. So I haven't talked to you since that announcement. I just wonder what your reaction was.
Not surprised. And, I feel for a little sympathy towards coaches that are at that situation where, how are you not going to ask that question?
Sure.
And I was in that position, and first thing I'd say is I understand you have to ask that question, but I'm not ready to give you an answer.
Right.
And so Kyle wasn't being cute. If he knew, he'd do it.
Sure.
That's who he is.
Sure. Yeah.
So if he knew he wanted to leave, he'd leave. He knew he was going to stay. But it's confusing. And, and it's, college sports is a drug. You love it. And you get addicted to it. And, for him, now everybody's saying, "Oh, he's done next year. He's done next year." I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah, right. He has the right to do it. What
Yeah.
he wants to do.
Yeah.
And somebody has a theory. Well, he wanted to end with a good winning season. He wanted to do this. Who knows? He knows.
Dr. Hill, I always go back to Greg Popovich, who said in 2010 or something, he pointed at Tim Duncan because somebody asked him during a practice, "Hey, how long are you to do this?" He pointed at Duncan and he said, "When he's done, I'm done." Then Duncan retired, and that offseason he signed a new 5-year extension.
Right.
And then during preseason media, they said, "You told us that you were done when Tim was going to retire, and Tim is retired, but you signed a new extension." And he said, "They pay me pretty well, and I still enjoy doing this, so I'm going to keep doing it." Period. End of story, right? It is that simple. End of story.
Well, it's just
coach as long as you can. Coach until somebody throws you out,
like anybody else. You're enthusiastic about what you do. You like what you do.
Sure.
You come here, it's not work.
Right.
And, why not? If you feel it.
Right.
That's the thing. If you can add up the whole yellow notepad, pluses and minuses, pluses and minuses, at the end of the day, it's the biggest decision you'll make except family things. And you didn't get married because your wife had a health test, or she has good teeth,
right,
or she's healthy, or this or that. You fell in love.
Right.
Well, a job like that, they're passionate, and you can't add it up plus or minus.
Yeah.
You have to put it like Popovich. That's a great example.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. They pay me a lot of money. What am I saying? How am I going to make $10 million a year doing something else? Okay, do your thing, man.
Yeah.
Hey, always great to see you.
It's good to see you.
Thanks so much for the time.
Thanks for having me.
And drive safe out there, okay?
I'm not a good driver anyway. I'm one of the few guys that admits they're not a good driver.
Okay. Well, it is hairy. We thought we were out of the snow, and Utah reminded us. But great to see you, sir.
Be careful. Thank you.
Dr. Chris Hill, always great to see him live in studio for an hour. Before we catch a break, let's welcome our guy Doug in from Farmer and Chemist on a snowy Tuesday afternoon. Doug, happy Tuesday, sir. How are you?
Spence, happy Tuesday to you as well. Happy snowy Tuesday.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I got to say, I woke up refreshed on a Tuesday morning because I slept well on a Monday night because I utilized the gummies that you gave me from Farmer and Chemist. And very gentle. You don't wake up with any sort of a hangover. You just wake up feeling refreshed. So let's start there, Doug. How can you help our listeners get better sleep?
Sleep is one of my favorite things to talk about because we don't get enough of it, and when we need it, we need it. So for folks who have trouble falling asleep, or if you wake up in the night and you're thinking about things, or you just can't get evening rest, then Farmer and Chemist Yummy Gummies are excellent. They give you, like you were saying, Spence, a great night's sleep without any hangover effect or drag in the morning. And you have a choice. You can use products with THC and products without THC. And the gummies taste good. They work equally well in terms of speed of onset of action, and it's awesome for a good night's rest.
A lot of our listeners may have thought they were done shoveling snow. Excuse me. I certainly thought I was, but then I woke up this morning and realized I had work to do, and I've got a bum shoulder. I've got a bum back because I'm an old man now, and the problem solved, SALVED, I believe, is something I keep in my golf bag. I keep on me at all times, so you rub a little bit of that on the shoulder and the back, and you're good to go. So let's help get some listeners maybe off some harmful pain medication and help them manage their pain. How can we do that at Farmer and Chemist?
Yeah, Farmer and Chemist Problem Salved is a topical, kind of an ointment. It's a little bit you just rub on to a small area, and it provides almost instant pain relief. In 5 or 10 minutes, that achy muscle, that spazzing joint, or that spazzing muscle or achy joint is feeling a lot better. And that's because it's a strong anti-inflammatory. So instead of using an ibuprofen or using a Voltaren cream or something like that, then you can just use Problem Salved, rub it on, and within 5 or 10 minutes, that muscle or joint is feeling a ton better.
All right, Doug, before I set you loose, let's help our listeners understand how they can become educated on your products if they don't really understand the dynamic of CBD and THC and all the derivatives. And then also you have a special offer for listeners who contact you. Let's hear the details.
Yeah, if you come into the store at 7719 South Main Street in historic Midvale, and Jason, Jeff, myself, and anybody on the team can help answer questions about CBD, CBN, THC, or just hemp oil, which really doesn't have anything in it. Got to have some rich cannabinoids to get some help. And for ESPN 700 listeners, if you go into the store or visit us at farmerandchemist.com and enter the promo code ESPN700, you get a 20% discount off your entire purchase.
Doug, thank you, sir, for the time. Be safe out there, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right. That's Doug, our good friend from Farmer and Chemist. Check him out, historic Main Street in Midvale, or online at farmerandchemist.com. As he referenced, you get a nice discount if you use the promo code ESPN700 at checkout. Open Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. On Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Closed on Sundays. CBD products, high concentrations of cannabinoids, so they are effective. But go ask questions. Don't take my word for it with our good friends at Farmer and Chemist. All right, we got 2 hours in the books. We got 2 hours to go. Our 4 o'clock hour is Zach Harper and Tony Parks on this chilly, snowy Tuesday afternoon. Drive safe out there and keep it right here. We'll take you home on ESPN 700. All right, special thanks to Dr. Chris Hill, former athletic director at the University of Utah, joining us live in studio. Started things off with Tony Jones from The Athletic. Let's continue the athletic portion of the radio program with our next guest. It's Pitbull in the background, so you know it's Zach Harper time on a Tuesday afternoon. All right, 30 degrees. It is dumping snow, our biggest snowstorm of the year. What's it like where you're at?
Well, it was really cold this morning when I went and got coffee. Still rolled the windows down because the dog loves the window down in the car, but it was like 50. I think it's really sunny outside, but I think it's deceptive. It's got to be like 66.
Deceptive.
A little windy. Yeah.
Here,
I walked to the store a little bit ago. Definitely needed a hoodie.
I was going to say, I was in Florida a week and a half ago down at a golf tournament, and the first day of the golf tournament, it was 62 and windy, and I could have been nude and been happy. But Floridians, as it were bundled up. So are you soft like that now? Like if anything below 70, you got to have a hoodie on and a beanie?
I don't think it's a softness. Like there's a litany of reasons why that's not acceptable weather to like be in shorts and everything. Like it's just like cold is cold. It doesn't matter where you are. There's colder, but it's still cold. So like, yeah, I've got a hoodie on if it's below 70 because why would I want to expose myself to those elements?
No, I think that's softness. I think you've become soft.
I think if you're in 75-degree weather all the time and then it drops to 65, you get colder.
Well, yes, by definition, 65 degrees is colder than 75 degrees, but 65 degrees in no way, shape, or form is legitimately cold, Zach.
It's colder than the surface of Mercury.
I cannot that sounds like something Trump would say with no way to even back that up. So
it's closer to the sun, so that's just scientifically true.
Okay.
Trust me, I've been on space TikTok a lot over the last couple of months. I'm learning a lot about space. Well, I don't know that I'm learning a lot about space, but I'm finding out, like, I'm having a lot of information thrown at me.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I just know you lived in our market once upon a time, then you left us for L.A., and it feels like you've become soft. That's all I'm saying.
No, I hated the cold there, too. Like, 55 was still cold to me in Salt Lake City. It was still cold to me when I lived in Minneapolis. Like, 55, 60, 65, that's still cold.
Minneapolis winters make this look, warm. So you can't complain. And I grew up in the Northeast. I mean, Northeast winters are hell. It's March 18th, and there's 6 feet of snow outside. So I'm just bummed out.
Yeah, I mean, look, I feel bad for you, but also, your taxes aren't as bad.
Right? Okay, all right, that's enough. That'll do, Zach. That'll do. All right, only because it's topical, and I would imagine at some point throughout the course of your career, you covered Alex Jensen. You were able to get to know Alex Jensen, and after 9 years as Quinn Snyder's lead assistant, 1 year with Will, and 3 years in Dallas with Jason Kidd, Alex Jensen leaves the NBA ranks to take over the University of Utah as their head coach. I just wonder what sort of context you have with this kind of big piece of news that's dropped over the past 48 hours.
Yeah, he was one of those guys where, like, it was him. There was, like, who was it? It was Lamar Skeeter. There was Johnny Bryant, right? Like, there was these assistants under Quinn who were just renowned as, like, these great development guys, right? And it was part of the reason why the Jazz are so good at developing players is they just have these incredible coaches. I think I was a little shocked, like he never seemed to get much buzz around head coaching positions in the NBA, which was weird to me because he was so well liked within the organization, and even outside the organization, people talked about him in a very high regard. But some guys just have those situations where they don't get that. I don't know if that's an agent thing. I don't know if that's an interview thing. I don't know what that is. But the idea of him going and being the head coach at a major program, it makes sense. Like if he's as good at development, and you never really know this stuff, kind of from the outside looking in. You just kind of go off what you see and what you hear, second and third hand. But if he's as good as, or even half as good as they would rave about him, with, like, you throw him into a college environment with young players who need that skill development and need to prepare for the NBA, he's going to be as good as anybody at the college level.
I wonder, since you were around here at the time, because you hear these stories, and look, the bottom line is when a player is able to improve in such a stark, rapid fashion, most of the credit does go to the player, but Dennis Lindsay on my show used the term circus freak to describe the way that Rudy Gobert was treated at the NBA Combine. And then Rudy's rookie year, I remember can he run up and down the floor without snapping a leg in half? Like, it didn't look like it was going to work at all. And then throughout the course of really one off season, Rudy went from like a two-way G League guy, is this going to work, to a defensive stalwart, Hall of Fame player, multi-time All-Star and Defensive Player of the Year. And most people that watch that development up close talk about Alex's hand in that. Alex also worked with Walker Kessler for a year and then went on down to Dallas and worked with Lively and Gaffer and those other bigs. So do you have any insight as to kind of the developmental side of what Alex Jensen has been able to bring to a lot of really good players in the pros?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you can be, especially in today's game, because we have seen this resurgence of big men, if you can be kind of a big man whisperer of sorts, right? And at the college level, it's going to be very important. It's a big skill. Like, I always laugh because, like, just one of the things that drives me the most crazy is basketball influencer trainers on social media. Right?
Oh man!
I have a real hatred for that, just the entire culture and everything. And I'm not saying they don't do anything, but yes, you work with someone for like a certain amount of time over 2-3 months, maybe 4 months, considering how long your off season is. And you learn skills and you learn things or whatever. But to me, I never look at that as like actual development. What I look at is like, what were you like the 8 months you were with your NBA team? And so when you see someone like Rudy, like I bet Rudy, first of all, like you said, like the player gets the majority of the credit and they have to be willing to work, but they also have to be taught what to work on. I can go shoot 1,000 jumpers in the gym all day and get pretty decent at it. But if I'm not being taught the proper way to apply all this to an NBA game or to a basketball game, it doesn't really mean anything, right? Like the application of that. And I think from what I heard, the application of not just the skills, but the awareness on here's what you need to do in these situations and how you need to adapt. That's where Alex Jensen seemed to like really shine with Rudy in particular, because that's what I was around for a couple of years. And so that application of it, which I think is the biggest skill set. Like I was talking, this is going to sound like a name drop, and it is a little bit, but I was talking to Dominique Wilkins years ago before a game in Atlanta, and he was talking about, all these guys learn all these basketball skills, but they don't learn how to play, right? Like they don't learn how to play in the off season. These veterans in the 80s and 90s, like they would just go and actually play basketball. And that's how they learned how to get better at basketball. And so learning the application of the skill matters way more than learning the skill itself. And I think Alex Jensen is the guy that teaches you how to adapt to the game of basketball.
Do you think we'll see more? Because, college basketball now has moved into this space where it does mirror the pros in a way that it didn't even 4 or 5 years ago. And it was always a rare thing for a coach to give up the pro life to go back to college. And the only time it happened is if you didn't really have any other choice, like a John Calipari or Rick Pitino or what have you. And, ultimately the days of taking a flight with 2 stops and a layover, then renting a car to drive to the outskirts of Iowa to see a prospect aren't necessarily the deal in college anymore. In the NBA, you know the deal. You fly in the sky in a 5-star hotel, you eat lobster and steak, and you land and you check in your 5-star hotel, and life is pretty good even when you're on the road. But the way the college game is going, it feels like there's been a little bit more of willingness from pro coaches to look at, college gigs. Do you think this is the beginning of a bit of a trend?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately there are just so many more jobs, right? There's 30 teams in the NBA, right? And there's 100 and something, 120, 130 D1 schools, or maybe that's even low. There might even be more than that in terms of the programs. And so, one, the opportunity is greater, but two, it is becoming such a business, like an overt business at the college level. I do think guys if you don't get that shot in the next few years, if you're not that hot name like like Charles Lee was before he went to Charlotte, or Darvin Ham was before he got the Lakers gig and everything, like if you're not that hot name, you do have to start looking to the college level, and the money's going to be there, and it's going to look a lot like, at least in terms of the business of it all, of getting players, it's going to look a lot like the NBA level.
You know what's funny? I knew that the number you dropped was low, and based off of the knowledge that you dropped of the temperature of the surface of Mercury, I know numbers are hard. But 352 D1 programs, Zach. That's wild.
I meant good ones.
No, that's fair. That's fair. But as far but your point about just employment, right? Like is well taken. You got to get a gig, and if at some point, if you run out of NBA opportunities, I guess the college game these days maybe is a better fallback option than it was back in the day.
Yeah, and you're looking, okay, if you're 350, all right, you're looking at more than 10 times the amount,
right?
In terms of employment, like, yeah, that's, they're not all going to be a Utah or a Kentucky or whatever, or, these major programs that can spend money. But I mean, we've seen so many times these guys make their way up through the ranks. Like, you're not using this as necessarily, this is my, next 20 years. Like, it might just be your next 4 or 5. I think plenty of coaches have it in mind of, I'll make a name for myself and then we'll see what happens.
What's the difference in the dating scene, LA and Salt Lake?
Oh, man, that's a whole different show. Look, I mean, like, it's a cesspool here. Like, it's just the worst. It's so weird. I can't even begin to tell you. Like, it's such a weird place to be, like, just talking to people. And I think society in general is broken in terms of communication. But I think because there are so many options here, that people just don't know how to interact with each other anymore. Like, it's almost like we weren't meant as a being to have this much information and these many things in front of us. I actually saw this video online the other day that I thought was perfectly put. They were like, we were meant to see our reflection maybe 4 times in our life, like in a pond. And now we see ourselves constantly, and we're not meant for this kind of information. I actually think we've gotten to a point because of technology, it has broken everybody. And so just everywhere you are, you're like, everyone in a societal way is broken, but LA is just a different kind of broken.
More success, Zach Harper, as a single male, and success can be defined on however you define it. I'm not here to judge, but Salt Lake or LA?
Oh, well, I wasn't a single man in Salt Lake. So that wasn't the scenario. I moved there with somebody and moved out of there with somebody. But I would say pre-COVID in LA was fish in a barrel. Couldn't have been easier to get dates. Since then, it has definitely gotten to be jumping through more hoops. And these days, it's just getting people out of their homes is difficult. In general.
Right.
Even the people I know who want to date, like, they're just like, can't be bothered.
Well, and I can't even blame anybody because I don't want to leave my house either. I mean, I just kind of think it's where we're at now.
Yeah, and I just, you keep waiting for that, like, that hot postal worker or, like, DoorDash person to, like, fall in love with. It's just not here.
Keep waiting, pal. I don't know that you're going to run into hot DoorDash. I mean, look, it is L.A. I think my experience is most people in the service industry are there to try to find some dream. So maybe, who knows, Zach, in Los Angeles, maybe the DoorDash dating community is more vibrant than I understand.
Let me tell you, the service industry in terms of waiters, waitresses, bartenders, that's still the spot to go. The apps and all that other stuff is just crap.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I just, because you brought up the whole, like, basketball trainer influencer culture. And I think influencer culture is a pathetic thing that needs to go away, period. But I think my favorite grifters are dating coaches, right? I think those are my favorite grifters right now.
Oh, my God. You're so right. And just the influencer culture, because I go to this, like, I don't necessarily buy anything there. I just go to, like, check out, the divorcees with my dog every day.
Mm-hmm.
But I go to, Erewhon?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll go sit outside. There's like this beautiful area outside of Erewhon every day. I'll go and hang out there in the morning with my dog. It's one of the places we go to just get him outside of the house before we have to be inside while I work all day. And recently there's been this thing at Erewhon where there is this Japanese strawberry. They sell a single strawberry. It's $19 for one strawberry.
Jeez.
And so I've seen all these people like Instagramming it and putting it on their phone and like everything. And I saw these 2 women this weekend. These two hot Russian women who were like doing some kind of Instagram thing for it, and they were just like, yeah, it wasn't worth it. And I'm like, this is where I live. This is the worst. This is absolutely the worst.
Jeez, man. How far we have fallen. Goodness gracious. Anyway, let's talk more basketball. We can move on. Let's see here. There's just nothing really interesting to talk about when it comes to the Jazz. I do wonder, you're a guy that pays attention to prospects in the draft. And I don't know if we're high speed ahead to, I've talked to you about this before, like with the Wembanyama year, when you would hear a couple of like guys trying to be different, like, well, I kind of like Scoot. And you're like, don't do that.
Right.
Are we in an area at all where there's any doubt about the top of the draft, or is it Cooper Flagg and everybody else?
I think it is Cooper Flagg and everybody else, but I think you'll get some of that, especially like if Duke gets knocked out early, or Cooper Flagg, he hurt his ankle, so if he doesn't have a good showing or something, you might start getting some people going, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, whatever. I do think Dylan Harper's awesome. Ace Bailey, people have kind of cooled off on. He was maybe more of a contender for this a year ago. And Rutgers just didn't have the year I think people thought they were going to have. And so Ace Bailey maybe can grab some momentum at some point leading up to the NBA draft. But I do think it's Cooper Flagg or bust. I think there's still, Edgecombe's interesting. He might put on like a show if Baylor can make a decent run, which I actually think they would have to go through Duke probably, I think if I remember the bracket correctly. So, maybe Edgecombe makes a name for himself. I really like the big guy from Duke, Maluak. Like I think he's someone that I'm not saying he's this type of player, but he reminds me a little bit of Joel Embiid in the sense of like, here's a guy that we don't really know a whole lot about. He's super skilled. He hasn't played basketball that long. And he's kind of come out of nowhere for a major program. Like I think he could really make a name for himself, but it's still Cooper.
Yeah, and it feels like that's the consensus among people that cover the draft on a daily basis in a way that I just don't, right? So here's interesting dynamic in the market. Sarah Todd, Deseret News, friend of the show, wrote a piece last week, and it kind of felt like she was talking to somebody in the organization to further a narrative where now the whole thing is like, hey, we're just starting the rebuild because the past 3 years was a tear down. It was not there's not a rebuild. We're just starting the rebuild because the past 3 years was a tear down. I find that hard to stomach because the Spurs were able to pull off a rebuild right away. Like, right. I don't know. And Sarah's great. I'm not knocking on Sarah at all. It just kind of felt like the organization trying to get this narrative out there like, hey, now the rebuild begins. Not in the past 3 years. We've been tearing it down. And even, Zach, if they luck into that number one pick and grab Cooper Flagg, there's a feel in the market that next year is going to feel a lot like this year, right? So what do you make of that? And I'm not even necessarily saying it's the wrong approach, but that's kind of this new narrative out this way.
Yeah, it's interesting marketing, right? Like, and I wouldn't fault Sarah either for running with that. Like, I think if that's the message they want out there, that's newsworthy and noteworthy. Like, I think that's interesting. It's fun to me. Kind of feels like the rebuild started when you traded Rudy and Donovan in the same offseason, right? That kind of feels like that's when the rebuild started to me. Now, I know you weren't a 15-win team that season, but I don't know. That's when you trade your two All-NBA guys, that's kind of when that begins. But you look at even the Spurs last year, first year with Wemby, they won 22 games. This year, obviously, things went differently because he had the blood clot, but they were still under 500 when he went down. Like they weren't. They were in the mix for the play-in, but they weren't definite to make it. Like even when you hit a home run with that number one pick, it still takes time to build this whole thing up. And so I would expect another couple of years of bad basketball. I don't think it should be this bad, right? But also that 2026 draft class looks pretty good. So maybe you want to be really bad next year and get another one of those guys. But man, that's tough to stomach. If you're telling the fan base this is just the start of this after what you've had to watch this season. And look, the previous 2 years were not great, but they were still bad, right? Like it was still a bad team. It was a lot better than this, but that's tough marketing. Like you better be dropping those ticket prices, which I'm sure they won't do.
No, they'll raise them. That's the deal. And you know what's wild, Zach? Like, I just, I watch every game. I watch every minute of every game. And I just don't see pieces in place that indicates this team is one or two pieces away from being close to anything other than maybe a play-in, right? And if that's your deal, then maybe the right thing is to, and again, operating off the premise that they're able to get lucky and grab Cooper Flagg at 1, and he's 18 years old. He reclassified. He should be a senior in high school. Does that reset your timeline where you look at trading Markkanen and you look at maybe even moving off of like a Walker Kessler and you say, like, we are going all in. Cooper is the centerpiece, and we're moving off of these veteran players that are good. The problem is, like, Keontae continues to be so maddening, and there's some stuff to like about Isaiah Collier, but you can't be a lead guard and shoot 25% from 3 in the NBA. I mean, maybe Taylor Hendricks gets healthy and we see something that we haven't. Cody Williams is their top 10 pick, and he has been horrible. Like, there is a case to be made that they are as far away right now as they were when they started this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on there. Like, there's no one on this team, and there are a lot of players I like on this team, but there's no one on this team that I think, they have to be a part of this in the future. Even Markkanen, right? Like, I don't think, like, he's still young. He's, 27-ish, 28-ish, somewhere in that range. But, like, he's not someone who needs to be a part of this. And here's the thing. Cooper Flagg could be one of the best rookies we've ever seen. That might add 5 wins.
Yeah.
Like, that's like, it doesn't mean they're going to be any kind of good. It means they'll be more rewatchable. But I also, my first year as a credential media member, I was covering the Kings team that had Tyreek Evans as a rookie. Now, it was great. We got to focus on the 25-5 campaign and him battling Brandon Jennings and Steph Curry for Rookie of the Year and all this stuff. That was still a horrible team that was really bad all season. Like, you can distract with little things here and there, but ultimately the product is still bad. And so those distractions only last so long, and you still have to put players around these guys. And there's just, it doesn't matter how good Cooper Flagg is. Like, he's not going to fix this in a year. This is with what they've shown this year. Like I'm with you. Like, there's no real light at the end of the tunnel. It doesn't look like an oncoming train.
Yep. All right, before I set you loose, let's do our weekly revisit. What is keeping Mark Daigneault up at night in the Western Conference, if anything at all? Because all of these teams that continue to jockey for this, like, okay, can they upend OKC, have serious holes? I mean, Houston's run off 7 straight, but they're the number 2 seed. I don't think anybody believes they're going to beat OKC in a series, and I still probably lean towards Denver just because I've seen them do it before. Golden State just ran off 7 straight, and I think they are 13-2 with Jimmy. And then the Lakers have those 2 players. Is there a team out there that can give OKC fits?
Yeah, I mean, I still think you have to worry about Jokic, right? But even, like, I still have questions about OKC in tight games, but that game against Boston was pretty good.
Yeah, it was.
Right? Like, they handled that pretty well. Like, for all of the questions I have, they didn't fully answer them, but that was something where I sat back and thought, okay, that's a pretty good step towards answering that question. And so, I think, man, it still feels like the Warriors are a player away, and maybe that's just Buddy Hield shooting like Buddy Hield again, not shooting like a league average shooter. And if that happens with everything else they've got going on, I could see that. I do think they're, like, on the verge of contending, but there might be a difference, with the way the Thunder are playing. There might be a difference between being on the verge of contending and actually contending with this team. I mean, their defense is just so special. Like I know the offense has been great lately, but it's fueled by that defense. They score like 22 points a game off turnovers. That's an insane number of points off turnovers for a team to do. And so, like, I'll still give respect to Jokic. I'll give respect to the Warriors. I guess you technically put the Lakers in by default, but the Thunder are looking pretty good right now.
Well, Zach, I can promise you tonight around 11:30, I'm going to be laying in bed wondering, what does a $19 strawberry taste like? So I appreciate that.
Apparently disappointing. Go look up the surface of Mercury right now. And by the way, because I live in LA, I know it's in retrograde, whatever that means.
You know what? Now you got to go. Now you got to go for so many different reasons. Some I'll explain off air. Oh, triggered. I am triggered, and I can't even tell you why. Is it also the summer solstice yet? Because I know that
I'm
has.
Sure
yeah.
I'm sure it is.
All right, man.
There was a lunar eclipse and everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever. Yeah.
Well, that means you better get to swiping because the lot is ready for it. Zach, thanks for the time, brother. Be good. Okay. Yeah,
all
man.
right, buddy.
Zach Harper, NBA Daily Assist style. $19 for a freaking strawberry? Are you insane? I mean, LA's not my style. I spend plenty of time working out there. It's not my scene, but $19 for a strawberry. So you can post it on your Instagram account. That's wild.
It's just a special strawberry. Is that what I'm getting?
I don't know. I mean, it better be special if it's $19.
If it's like claiming to be the best strawberry ever, right? Maybe it's like a hybrid engineered whatever. I'll try it one time. But anyone that's like going out and spending that much money on strawberries, grow your own.
There better be more than just what's in a typical strawberry if you're paying $19 for a strawberry.
Right.
If you catch my drift, I should say. Right?
That was a Freudian slip.
Well,
what's the grip, Spence?
It's the same thing. Posting a story of you eating a $19 strawberry on your Instagram account. Influencer culture is killing our society.
Yeah, it's a symptom of a larger tech issue, I think. But you're not wrong.
Okay, calm down, Anderson Cooper.
Let's go there.
No, we're good. We got to catch a break. And Zach Harper brought to you today by our friends at Advanced Window Products. Nate Orchard, Jake Weber, great people. You guys remember Nate. He's the mayor of Sac Lake City, one of the best to ever do it at the U and a longtime NFL vet. Here's the deal. If you need windows right now, call them today. But if you're anticipating needing windows in the next few months, buying a home, selling a home, after the school year or whatever, call them today as well because it's the New Year, New Window special where you save $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. Phone number is 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. You can find them online at advancedwindows.com. It's a local Utah company, nearly 40 years of servicing our community. They specialize in custom vinyl replacement windows or doors. Sales and installation are all in-house, which means you save a grip of money. They build it, they install it, and they guarantee it for life. It's a lifetime warranty that you can transfer to a new homeowner if you're planning on selling your home. From factory to the front door in 8 weeks or less, you can save on your energy bills with rebates available through Enbridge Energy. Financing available, so if you're thinking, hey, it's not my budget, well, you'd be surprised. You can save now and pay later. Payments as low as $150 a month. But the bottom line is you call today and you get on the schedule, and you lock in $2,500 of savings, whether you have them come by this week or in 2 months. Advanced Window Products, phone number 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100, or online at advancedwindows.com. All right, we'll catch a quick break. Tony Parks joins us coming up on the other side on a Tuesday drive right here on ESPN 700. I'll tell you about my good friends at Overtime Cards and Collectibles. My buddy Chris, his wife Michelle, they're just the best people. So, looking for a new hobby this new year, try card collecting. And now, if you are of a certain age, namely my age, around your 40s, I'll leave it there. Birthday yesterday, getting older, no big deal. Chances are at some point you probably collected cards, basketball cards, baseball cards, football cards. Well, where is that collection now? Is it collecting dust in your basement? Is it in your parents' storage shed? Well, wherever it is, go grab your collection and take it out to Overtime Cards and Collectibles at 10673 South State Street in Sandy. My guy Chris will go through your collection. Check out what you have. He did it for me, and I had no idea that in this massive box of cards I had was a Kobe Bryant Fleer rookie card. Didn't know I had it. It's on my mantle now. Hopefully it'll be a down payment for my son's house or something like that. So you can buy all your favorites there, from rare sports cards to local legends and hard-to-find Pokemon cards as well. Check them out online at overtimecardsandcollectibles.com, where you can buy or trade. But the best thing to do is stop by their beautiful location at 10673 South State Street in Sandy. Best spot for football, basketball, hockey, MMA, and even Pokemon card collecting. All right, going to move into the 5 o'clock hour of the program, coming up in about 20 minutes right now. But joining the program, friend of the show, fills in oftentimes when I'm away on vacation. Longtime personality here in the market, the voice of the Bees, Tony Parks on a Tuesday afternoon. TP, what's good, man?
Oh, man, a lot of good stuff, man. I'm so excited about, everything coming up with baseball season right around the corner. I just got finished up with all the conference championship games and stuff like that this past week. So that was a blast with some spring training mixed in. So been a little bit everywhere. So I get some time here in Salt Lake before the season begins for me, which is the 28th in El Paso. But of course, the home opener for the ballpark, April 8th. So we're fired up, man. We're excited for what's coming up.
So you're in town. I know you're
Yep.
a guy that's okay. So you're here in Salt Lake. Good stuff.
Oh, yeah. Living the toddler life right now, man.
There you
Chasing her all over the place.
Not a guy. Well,
So.
that's the good stuff, man. Enjoy it. You're going to blink and she's going to be 23 like mine. So enjoy it while you
You're
can.
100% right, man. Although I never expected to be playing zone defense here in a 2-on-1 situation, but I think that goes to speak to how bad of a defender I was.
Well,
so.
and you're also very anti-zone defense.
Yeah,
Right?
yes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to stick to the man-to-man principles, but I got to say we're struggling. She's great with change of direction. She's able to beat me to the spots time and time again.
Good lateral movement for a little pup, huh?
She does, man. She's quick. She's got the quicks, and the moment you think you've got her cut off, she changes direction. She gets where she wants to go. So
Love it.
She's awesome, man.
One of my favorite all-time Tony Parks stories, certainly, as I'm sitting there, not intentionally observing your conversation, but hearing your description of your ward ball team and being very adamant that Brother Jones wanted to play zone and you just would not let him. We are going full man-to-man. Whether it's AAU, high school, or ward ball, you are picking up your man full court.
When we get up 20 points, you go back to playing zone where you don't box out and you look like it's never your fault on defense. Until then, you know what? We're going to the tournament. We went to the tournament every year. We went to the finals 4 times. We never won it, but we were not a good enough team to get away with bad habits. And so, it was important. It was important.
But that says, Tony, all you need to know about Tony Parks, because I feel like the majority of people don't give a rip about the defense their ward ball team plays and only show up to stay in shape or throw an elbow at the elders quorum president or something. But you, Tony,
yes,
you were a stickler for the details to make sure your ward ball team was playing the right way. I love it.
If you really want to know how mean I got at times, I did have us play full court once, so a few out of shape guys wouldn't want to come back.
That's brutal. That is brutal. That is brutal. All right, Tony, transition time. Speaking of attention to detail, see what I did? Alex Jensen.
I like it.
He is hired as the 17th head coach in Utah men's basketball history. You and I were with the flagship home of the Utah Jazz when Alex was Quinn's #1 assistant. And I just want your thoughts on the whole thing. Craig losing the gig, where Utah basketball is at now, and what you think Alex can do for the program moving forward.
Well, the first thing people keep telling me is, oh, boy, they really won the press conference. And I thought, well, yeah, but they're also planning on, winning games. and they plan on winning at a big level. And you don't make a move like this to get marginally better, especially with, Craig having a couple of years left on that deal. But, it takes me back to this thought I had about when the University of Utah football team lost to New Mexico in 2003. It was kind of a surprising home loss for a team that was playing well. And remember, that was the year before they went on and won the Fiesta Bowl. People weren't sure, kind of what was going to happen with their team. And Urban Meyer walked in the locker room, addressed his group, and he said, when things are not going the way that you want in this situation, you can do one of two things. You can increase your commitment or lower your expectation. And I'm happy for this scenario, this situation, for Mark Harlan and company to increase their level of commitment. And I feel for any coach, by the way, who's built their roster, had it flipped upside down, transfer portal, injury, losing players to NIL, I never am happy to see a coach fall short of their expectations. But it really takes something special to be able to manage things the way you need to at the college basketball level. Now, this is a new era, and Alex Jensen is going to put the energy into that program that they haven't had before. One thing I love about this move is his experience of working in the NBA. In my opinion, this day and age, you need some guys who know how to manage the business side of this differently, and it's more NBA-like, not identical, but some of the nuances that come with managing an NBA team or coaching an NBA team. And they're going to have an influx of investment and excitement, and they'll need the results to match with that. We know that. The good news is they're starting for a point where the expectations aren't that they're going to be a 3 seed next year, but I do think that this is a guy that can help them, take good steps forward and eventually become a winner, because the first step to winning now is eliminating losing. And the first place that I think he's going to start is really polishing the fundamentals to be at a standard that is what Alex Jensen has worked with so many different people at the NBA level. Being better with ball screen defense, more consistent precision on the way that they do things. I think that kind of stuff is going to level up. And I think the University of Utah has got some really bright days ahead.
So to your point about winning the press conference, typically that's like the last thing on my checklist. I don't give a rip.
Right.
I keep talking about Nick Sirianni's opening press conference when he was introduced as the Eagles head coach. And anyone that had never heard of Nick Sirianni was like, dude, did you hire a guy that doesn't speak English? Like, what is up? And they just won the freaking Super Bowl, right? So
right.
Ultimately, whatever, results are all that matters. But from my seat, Tony, this is a basketball community that has been dormant for like 20 years. And a little shot of adrenaline is not the worst thing. And it feels like the hiring of Alex Jensen has kind of given this community a little buzz and a little hope in a way that I don't know that I've felt in quite some time, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100% agree. Because anytime somebody says, well, they won the press conference, I'm thinking, okay, but that was far from the most important thing they won. They hired a guy with great experience who has been, building his time there in the NBA and is really primed to be a head coach. There couldn't be a better time for him to step in as a head coach. And it's a great time to be able to get him into this program. Clearly his history with the program is great. There's no doubt. I know this isn't the same thing, but like when Ty Detmer was the OC at BYU and you felt the fever pitch, I'm going, sure, but he's never been a coach at the college football level. And there's a lot he doesn't understand. And I don't know what those variables look like. That's obviously not the situation here. He's got history with the program. There's this influx of energy, and there's a clear level of competence and qualification and the amount of time that he's poured in. So I think all of that together leads this to be the best hire, even with winning the press conference. So yeah, to your point, it's been a long time since they've had some real juice and energy about what's to come, and I think they've really needed that. It's interesting to see what the energy levels used to be like for Utah basketball when the expectation was that they would be in the tournament. And it was a disappointment when they were an 8 seed one year and I think won the first game and then and lost in the second round. That was considered like a very shrug shoulders season. So I'm excited for that program to get back. I think BYU is showing, obviously, with what they're doing and the way they're managing their program, NBA background, NBA mindset, NBA concepts. That I think is a great way to move. And that's another reason why I think this is a terrific hire.
I wonder what your memories / perspective are, because one of the coolest things, opportunities I had when you and I were working together at the old station, I was just lucky that for whatever reason, Quinn liked me, right? I was just lucky that way. Mm-hmm. And so he invited me to practice. He let me sit in on practices, and not a ton and not all the time, but it did give me kind of a firsthand look to see the way Quinn ran his program. And certainly witnessing Alex working with Gobert and Fave and all the bigs was a really cool thing, because You remember, Tony, Rudy's rookie season, all of us were kind of like, I don't know, man. Like, this is a project. And I'm not saying overnight, but a lot quicker than I expected. His growth was expedited tremendously, and the credit goes to Rudy. But most people in the organization pointed to the way Alex helped develop him. What are your memories of that, and how important is that as far as what Alex has in front of him? Because I don't care about, you can say everything that you want to say about, well, you got to pay players, and you do, and you have to have economic viability and financial infrastructure that competes with the best, and you do. You still have to develop, no matter what. In college, you still have to develop, and this is his bread and butter. What are your memories of watching Alex as a developmental coach with the Jazz?
Oh, it was unreal because, yeah, you and I both remember Rudy Gobert, and I remember going into that offseason before Quinn had arrived. Going into the offseason, I vividly remember Enes Kanter saying to me at locker room clean out because Ty Corbin was going to be gone, and they started talking, and he was like, yeah, I should have played more. I should have this. He was complaining about playing time, and I brought up, like, you averaged like 32 minutes a game in the last 3 months. I mean, you're coming off the bench, but you're averaging 32 minutes a game. And this team went from one of the worst defensively to the very worst defensively. I said, why? What justifies you playing more? And his response was, because I am young and I am top 5 pick. And I thought, oh boy. And the argument was, why didn't they play the young players and just get them out there? And I thought, no, there's not enough expertise that's going on to build these guys the right way. The strange thing was, I see Rudy Gobert the next season, and I remember them losing 9 games in a row at one point, and he was really confident. And I'm thinking, you look like you feel good about what's coming around the corner. And Rudy kept talking about the work that's going on is really, really good. I feel my body getting stronger. I feel myself getting better. Remember, this guy wouldn't stop offensive goaltending. It was like, would you knock that off? These rules are different, Rudy. Like, you have to, like, there were all kinds of strange things with him. So he appeared in the moment to kind of be the big European who was just going to kind of be slow to develop, and hey, you can't teach height, and everybody's going to go, when's this guy going to get good? Well, it happened quickly, and Alex was a huge reason why. And what he did was really fine tune the key things that make the 2 millimeter difference between taking advantage of what you have and really stacking your wins, really maximizing the intensity of the rep, really flexing the muscles that you have to get the most out of them. And then you start watching the inches and the instincts that Rudy started to play with, and you're going, wait, this guy's got something going on here. So it wasn't just his development of how to catch it, but he ended up getting stronger with his hands. Like, all these things started to come together. It takes me back to when Jim Harbaugh took over Michigan football. He took everybody out, and they worked nothing but fundamentals, just fundamentals every minute, every second of every day. They came out, they lost to Utah in their first game, but they didn't lose in short yardage. They were good up front, both sides. You started going, wait, this team isn't sloppy anymore. And I remember my brother and I going, Michigan football is going to be all right. And they went on to win 10 games. Now, I don't know if Alex is going to do the equivalent with that here, but what I do know is this. The guys that he brings in there, they are going to be able to feel the confidence and the trust that what they're being coached at makes the difference between these little possessions that turn into buckets or an O board or whatever those inches are, to move them and stack up their percentages more towards winning rather than some of the losing tendencies and plays. Because when you watch Utah basketball the last few years, you can see some of the really good that's there, and far too often the losing plays, the losing stretches, and the black eye portions of the games that end up costing them.
Look at you sneaking in a little Big Blue. Do we want to talk a little Sean Dunston to Mark Grace while we're at it, Tony?
Hey, Big Ten champs, by the way.
Yep.
Real excited. Got snubbed with the 5 seed, but that's what happens.
I love how the committee's like, I don't give a rip about what happens in the conference tournament.
Right.
Like, they've
I'm like,
already
what
made up
just
their
happened?
mind. Yeah. They've obviously already made up their mind. Michigan beat 2 4 seeds and a 3 seed. Like, you're a 5. We already decided we're on vacation. But
yeah,
we'll
I don't
see.
care how well you played. You're defending better. Yeah, I know. You're
No.
still a 5. You
No,
lost
we'll
to
see.
Michigan State twice. You're back.
Wild.
5 them.
No, wild stuff, man. Wild stuff. Hey, let's move over now. Now that we've done the Utah stuff, BYU in the tournament. Speaking of a conference tournament performance that really didn't move the needle. Now they got trucked by Houston, but every time I watch Houston play, I just feel bad for the other team. I'm like, dude, that's how good they are. They grab a 6 seed, and their second round game against Wisconsin might be a better matchup for them than their first round game against VCU as an 11 seed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Ryan Odom, former Utah State head coach. They've got the Conference Player of the Year, a former Aggie. They've got 3, 6, 10 dudes in their rotation. Oftentimes, Ryan plays them together. Now, what VCU doesn't do defensively on an elite level is guard the 3. And if you're a BYU fan, that's good news because BYU wants to shoot the 3. However, during the course of this season, the reason I think Kevin's team is better this year than Mark's team was a year ago is when the 3 hasn't been able to fall, they bring in the Traore kid, who's a real polished post player, get some buckets. They can, attack the glass a little bit. They will not be able to do that against VCU. They simply have to hit their 3s. Now, if you're a BYU fan saying that's what we do, well, the thing about the NCAA tournament is if you have one game where you go cold, you go home. So I think BYU falls into good fortune with the destination being Denver. And I don't necessarily believe they should have been a 5 seed. I think there's a case to be made. But they're facing a really good team round 1. What do you make of where we find ourselves with BYU hoops?
Yeah, I think that this is going to be a team that will survive and advance that first round. The other thing you have to remember, too, while this is a 3-point shooting team and they get a lot of love for that, they were number 1 in effective field goal percentage in the Big 12. But the one thing that was sneaky and under the radar, they were the best team in the Big 12 at 2-point field goal percentage. That actually was a very, very strong part for them throughout the season. So I do think it's going to be interesting. If the shots aren't falling, how do they make sure that they get some high percentage opportunities to do what it takes to survive and advance? And on the other side of that too, I'm with you. So I have them going all the way to the 16. And I really like their chances to have, what could be a nice little mini tournament run here. This offense is the 11th best in offensive efficiency in the country. And so, they deserve a lot of credit for all of that. They're the 6th best at 2-point field goal percentage in the country, 33rd best in 3-point field goal percentage. So what I like about them, here's what I really love about BYU basketball. And this is why I think they're very dangerous in this tournament. I have them to the 16, but I'm not surprised if they go deeper. When it comes to BYU basketball, what they impressed me with most is that they had several games I thought they were far from their best, where I thought they played somewhat flawed. And not only did they play well, they flourished at certain stretches of the game. I mean, the way that they had beaten Iowa State in that matchup in what was it? The late regular season matchup with Iowa State. The way they won that game, I'm going, okay, man, over the course of 40 minutes and 50 in that game, you guys can really pedal down and play at an extremely high level. So that is something I like about them. They don't have to play perfect to win. They have a variety of different ways that they can beat you. And I think that that's something that will really, really help them. I think they have a variety of weapons. When they lost that game to Utah, I mean, I was very critical, saying, you know what, this is ridiculous that you're losing to a team like that. I mean, put the rivalry aside. You've accumulated talent. You spent a lot on the staff. That was your fourth loss in 5 games. And this is a team that you just had no business losing to when you look at the way that your team is formatted and the expectations that you have. And props to them. They've only lost 3 total games since then, including that conference tournament. So when it comes to playing the contenders like a Houston, BYU takes a backseat. There's no doubt. When it's everything else in between, I think they're going to be a blast to watch in this tournament. And I think they're going to have, a tournament where they move into that second weekend.
All right, Tony, final thing, and I'll set you loose. We have the worst basketball team in pro basketball playing in Salt Lake. The Utah Jazz are 15-54. They've lost 10 straight games. And we all know what time it is. We all know the deal. We know what they're trying to do. The secret's out. I just wonder if you think it's going to look a lot like this next year.
For the fan, I hope not. But I think it will. I think it's really, really tough to be like, okay, folks, now it's time for an upward swing. And even if you do have an upward swing, I think it takes a year for a lot of the habits that were formed to somehow be overturned. I think in terms of the players who are not lost on what's going on, in terms of many in the organization, not lost on what's going on, having a complete reversal of that in one season, unless you just totally overhauled the roster and completely flipped it inside out and had a generational player. We're talking Akeem Olajuwon level, Michael Jordan level. It would be something that slowly reverses its way back over. I thought the way that you broke it down with it wasn't a rebuild. It was a tear down and then a rebuild. And I think, yeah, sadly, it's headed for something like that. I forget what the Boston Celtics timeline was, but I want to say it was pretty much 4 years and not a lot going on before another 8 years of eventually, blossoming into something great. So this next year would be that fourth year, and you might have to endure that other year. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. For any fan, by the way, we're calling it like it is. That doesn't mean that you have to endorse it as a fan. That doesn't mean you have to be happy with it, but it's clear what their direction is. Danny Ainge has had success with this, with an organization before that eventually won a title. The Jazz historically have never done this before. And so it is something that they're trying different. And there's no guarantee it pays off for the ultimate goal in the end. What we do know is that while they've never done this in the past and they're hopeful for a different result, I've always said the way Dennis did it and the way Ainge is doing it, they're very different. You can see the payoff. You can see the risk involved in each of them. But for any fan that says, I'm okay sitting back and not investing my money until I know we're truly surging the direction that goes towards winning, I'm going to hold on to my money until then, or I'm going to hold on to my time and I'll read it and follow up or do whatever. You're not less of a fan. You're not lacking loyalty. You're not, somehow, not as big a Jazz fan as you used to be. What it means is you understand that this is a process of patience, and the way you spend your dollars and the way you spend your time, that sort of patience is respected and understood if that's the way that you approach it. But it's clear this is what they're doing. And like you said, yeah, I think unless something drastic happened in terms of the way that they constructed their roster next year, they're headed for a similar season. And that I feel for the fans.
Worked for the Millers for 7 years. I consider Steve Starks a friend. I am on board with potentially Major League Baseball landing in our market, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yes.
But I'm also a resident of Salt Lake and live about 10 minutes away from Smith's Ballpark downtown, which is no longer the home of Bees baseball, which makes me sad. But tell us about this new facility out at Daybreak. What are we in for now, Tony, that the season's right around the corner?
You're in for a very major league-esque experience at a minor league ballpark. And that is something that we strived for heavily with Smith's Ballpark in terms of the fan experience with entertainment. We couldn't do anything about some of the other challenges that might be there with a ballpark that was aging and, some of the other elements involved. But now you have some of those amenities combined with the fact that I think that marketing team has had an off season that is tremendous. They have really leveled up in terms of their focus. They've leveled up in terms of the types of people that they have in there to create great game presentation, great energy, great sound and feel. And I'm excited to see that happen. I think the talent level obviously has been an upgrade at the MC position with Sammy Miller. I mean, the guy they had before was just a disaster.
For sure.
That guy, goodness gracious. But they, that with stuff like that, when you come to the game now, it's going to be different than it was at Smith's Ballpark. Smith's Ballpark was iconic and historic, and you had generations of people that went there. There's no doubt that appeal was there. I think when people, you come out to Daybreak, it's not going to be an identical experience, but there's going to be so many things that are leveled up that I think the fan will say, I really appreciate what we had, and I also appreciate what we have. Many times people may move out of a home that you had emotional connection to, and your family was growing or whatever the reasons were that you moved. And when you moved, you definitely look fondly on the history of the previous place, and you also appreciate what you have in front of you. So last year it was a wonderful turning of the page to be a part of an iconic final season, and this year I'm honored to obviously call the action for the inaugural season of a new ballpark. So I think fans are really going to love the overall experience that they have.
All right, my friend, always a pleasure. Appreciate the time. Be safe in this, I don't know, it's March 18th, but it's January 2nd, too. So be safe out there. And
yes.
Thanks for the time, brother.
You bet. And Mercury is at a high
right.
of 800 and a low of minus 290 today. So hang in there.
Good knowledge. Good knowledge, Tony. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man. We'll see you.
Tony Parks, voice of the Bees, took over for the legend Steve Klauke. May Steve rest in peace. We'll catch a break. 5 o'clock hour of the program comes your way. Coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. All right, let's get it. Drive at 5 time Tuesday afternoon. About 11 minutes past the hour, 5 o'clock. It was sunny 20 minutes ago. Started snowing again. Now the snow has kind of let up, but it is a chilly and cold March 18th, Tuesday afternoon. But as it is every single day, it's going to have you along for the ride. Your commute home on this Tuesday starts right now. Be safe out there and keep it right here. We'll take you home on ESPN 700. Dr. Chris Hill coming up in about 20 minutes to give you his thoughts on the hiring of Alex Jensen. Dr. Hill, the former athletic director at the University of Utah. Alex was introduced as the 17th head coach in Utah men's basketball history last night. If you missed that press conference, I would encourage you to log on to ESPN700sports.com. 5 o'clock hour of the program today is brought to you by the 2025 Big 12 Gymnastics Championship. Watch the best of the best Saturday, March 22nd in the Maverick Center. Get your tickets today at maverickcenter.com. So Alex Jensen formally introduced last night as the head coach for the Utah men's basketball program. Now we kind of wait and see what the next steps are as it pertains to his staff and how they're going to fill that out. The rumors regarding Andre Miller are still out there. The rumors regarding Andre Miller joining Alex Jensen as potentially his lead assistant is still out there. And as we've been talking about throughout the course of the show today, we'll get with this with Dr. Hill coming up in a bit. I'm not saying that, the idea of Alex simply hiring former Utes is all bad. But I don't know that that's the direction you want to go to entirely when you just fill out the staff. You want to kind of look around a little bit at what's working during the landscape of college basketball over the past few years as the business of the sport has changed. The approach that you need to take has changed, and the infrastructure of the sport is much different than it was even just a few years ago. Over the course of 20 years in the pros, G League, Jazz, Dallas Mavericks, Alex has, I would imagine, cultivated a tremendous amount of relationships with people that aren't just simply in this stratosphere, in this ecosystem. Now, Andre's a no-brainer. If Andre Miller wants to join the staff, I think that's the direction you have to go in. And yes, I am referring to the staffs that have been put together around college basketball that have achieved success in maybe a way that is a different approach than just a couple of years ago. And yes, I am talking about BYU. Kevin Young has surrounded himself with former NBA people, top to bottom, not just his assistant coaches, his strength and conditioning staff, his nutritionists. People have followed him from the Phoenix Suns to join Kevin down in Provo to build BYU up to what they've been built up to right now. It's not just what they are in the interim, in the immediate. It's what they are going to be moving forward as soon as next season when they welcome in the best recruit in high school basketball, A.J. DeBanza, to join whoever else Kevin is able to get to sign with them. And there are rumors that other top recruits are looking to come play for BYU next year. Who do they return? That's a question that I can't answer. I don't know. The Yegor Demon kid is thought to be a lottery pick. I don't think he's ready. I wouldn't be against the idea of bringing him back for another year if that's what he wants to do. Now, you want to start the clock on your pro career as quickly as you can. And the motivation is simple. You want to get to that second, third, and sometimes fourth, and if you're Chris Paul, maybe your fifth max contract. You want to run out the clock on your rookie deal when you're not allowed to make as much money as you are when you're a vet as soon as possible. So if Yegor Demon's a lottery pick, Yegor Demon's got to go play NBA basketball, but maybe they bring him back, and maybe they have some other pieces coming back to surround A.J. DeBanza and other players with good veteran experience, guys that have experienced the NCAA tournament maybe multiple times, like a Dallin Hall, guys that have Big 12 experience. And Kevin Young and his staff been able to do this by preaching a message of, do you want to play in the NBA? Well, I know how to do that for you. And if you're Kevin Young, you can walk into a living room and you can say, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Chris Paul. Yeah, I coached all of them. If you're Alex Jensen, you can now go sit across from a recruit and say, do you know Kyrie Irving? Do you know Luka Doncic? Do you know Donovan Mitchell? Do you know Rudy Gobert? Yeah, I coached all of them. And that's an approach and a message now that will work on a level that maybe once upon a time it wasn't necessarily as paramount. Certainly the one-and-done element is something that can't be ignored. I mean, A.J. DeBanza and his father went on First Take and basically said, yeah, we are one and done. BYU is paying A.J. DeBanza $7 million for 5 months of basketball. And that's the other element to this entire storyline that I'll continue to kind of harp on a little bit, because while I don't have the P&L statements from the University of Utah Athletic Department, while I don't know exactly what sort of revenue streams they have at their disposal, the simple fact of the matter that Alex took this job has to indicate the questions he had were answered the right way. Because let's be very clear about one thing. Alex Jensen did not need this job. Alex Jensen was highly thought of in the Dallas Maverick organization. The Dallas Maverick organization wanted to keep Alex Jensen around. This was not a, hey, Mark Harlan just called, he wants to take the job, let's move tomorrow scenario from Alex and Natalie and his family. This was something that they took time to think about. This was something they didn't land on easily. And I'm sure throughout the course of the process, Alex did his due diligence on a lot of different things. His new boss, for one, the financial ecosystem, for two, the economic infrastructure of the basketball program, and what sort of financial commitment Alex could count on from the athletic department to not just pay his salary, to pay his coaches the way that they need to be paid. And then the bottom line is to pay the players what they're asking for in order to play college basketball now. And NIL changed all this. It just did. I know a lot of you don't like it. It really is the only fair and free way that this thing should have gone, in my opinion, with players for a number of years, making other people rich as a result of their performance. We show up to watch the players after all. We turn the games on television to watch the players after all. And so them receiving their fair share of the pie, to me, is not a bad thing. It never has been a bad thing, but it does change the sport in an undeniable way. And I've never debated against that. And because of those changes, the old way of kind of going about this might just be out the window now. This does feel like a more modern approach. And yes, there are reports out there that this was very much booster driven. This was very much donor driven. That's fine. That's completely okay if that's the way you want to roll, because guess who has to bankroll your program? The people that write the checks to donate to your athletic department, the alums that care about Utah athletics, the boosters and the donors that run big businesses here in our market or come from wealthy families that long have donated to the University of Utah. If they call Taylor Randall and if they call Mark Harlan and they say, if you want my checks to keep coming, you hire him, guess what you do? You hire him. You hire Alex Jensen. And only time will tell. It's an exercise in futility trying to predict what next season is going to be like. And while the Big 12 this year was not the best conference in college basketball, that honor was bestowed upon the SEC. Year in and year out, this is going to be a top 2 or 3 conference, and there will be some years where it is the best college basketball conference in America. We've been talking about reasonable expectations year one. Again, exercise in futility. No clue what the roster will look like. Hunter Erickson entered the transfer portal today. I didn't even know he had eligibility left. But he can play for another year as a grad transfer. Jake Wallin has officially entered the transfer portal as well. And then there are players like Ezra Asar, as well as Keanu Dawes and Myra Little and Mike Shravjamps. Those are players that have the ability, as far as eligibility goes, to come back and play for Utah for another year if they want to and if Alex wants them to as well. Which begs the question, what approach will Alex take? Does he want a completely clean slate? Move on from anything that Craig Smith put into place and then just completely start over as a blank page type thing, and you can create whatever piece of art that you want to create now that the program is yours. I don't know. Only time will tell. Utah basketball, ironically enough, is actually playing still in the postseason. They're going to take on Butler in the newly formed college basketball crown on March the 31st at 1 o'clock Mountain Time, and it's televised on FS1. Of course, you can hear the game on our radio station. That tournament will be taking place in Las Vegas. So that's kind of the big news of the day today, the Alex Jensen press conference that took place last night to introduce Alex as the 17th head coach in Utah men's basketball.